Chapter 1062. While Jiang Fengmian, Mu Xingzu, and the others were resting under the longevity ancient tree, Yi Guqin, Kempo, Jian Jinghong, Jian Shisan, and the others continued their exploration. The sacred dynasty's inheritance is huge, and there are many opportunities. I suggest we split up and search for opportunities on our own. That way, the chances of success will be higher, Jian Jinghong said. That's right. Although it's safe for us to move together, the opportunities we find won't be enough for us to split evenly. Since we've come to the sacred dynasty's inheritance, it's impossible not to take some risks. Yi Guqin nodded in agreement. All right, if that's the case, let's split up. Kempo also nodded. Jian Shisan held the bloodbath sword in his hand. He didn't say anything, but he nodded in agreement. Then the group began to split up, heading in different directions. Before Yi Guqin left, he took a deep look at Jian Shisan. What kind of face was hidden under that grimacing mask? Was Jian Shisan the one who killed Jian Shisan? Was Jian Shisan a spy from the aristocratic families? Kempo and Jian Shi had already concluded that it was the aristocratic families who were trying to sow discord. But Yi Guqin felt that it wasn't that simple. Jian Shisan was also a man with a story. But no matter what, since Kempo and Jian Shi didn't question him, Yi Guqin naturally didn't have the right to question him. After that, Yi Guqin also left alone. The sacred dynasty's inheritance was huge. There were all kinds of dilapidated palaces scattered around. Yi Guqin was also searching among the ruins. Now that the opponents are getting stronger, I have to break through as soon as possible. Yi Guqin thought to himself as he moved. His current strength was indeed not weak. Yi Guqin was absolutely confident that he could kill Gu Xiaoyang if he were to fight him again. Of course, as the genius of the Starry Sword Pavilion, Gu Xiaoyang would not remain stagnant. It could be said that if Yi Guqin used the heaven-devouring secret technique, his strength was enough to fight against some heaven prides of the third layer of the divine dwelling realm. However, secret techniques were secret techniques after all. There was still a difference between raising one's combat power through secret techniques and raising one's cultivation base. Moreover, Jian Kuei's strength was also unfathomable. Not to mention, there was also Purple, who was ranked first on the sword leaderboard. Yi Guqin did not believe that the mysterious genius would miss the battle of geniuses. Therefore, Yi Guqin felt a sense of crisis. I need to ascend to the divine dwelling stage as soon as possible. At the same time, I can also practice the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra again. Yi Guqin muttered to himself. If his strength rose to the divine dwelling stage, then he could cultivate the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. Yi Guqin's strength would soar again. At that time he would have a place in the battle of geniuses. And now, the opportunity that was most likely to raise Yi Guqin's cultivation base was naturally in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Yi Guqin made a decision and began to search again. After about half an hour, Yi Guqin vaguely sensed a strong and pure spirit qi fluctuation in front of him. Sensing this fluctuation, Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. He withdrew his aura and flashed away. An ancient palace appeared in the ruins in front of him. On the plaque of the palace, 3 ancient words were written: Spirit Transformation Hall. There were many palaces in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove. Most of the palaces had collapsed, and there were no resources in them. But a small number of palaces were still intact because of incomplete formations. There may be unimaginable opportunities in them. Just when Yi Guqin was about to appear, suddenly, he saw a guard in front of the palace. He was dressed in golden armor and held a golden spear in his hand. It was none other than Zhang Bubi, who ranked 10th on the War God Dynasty's War God list. Zhang Bubi had also appeared in the ancient Chaos Wasteland. At that time, Zhang Bubi could give Yi Guqin some pressure. But now Yi Guqin was not afraid at all. Zhang Bubi did not go in to plunder, but guarded the door. Could there be? Yi Guqin immediately thought of a person. The War God Dynasty's little princess Zhao Xiaodi. Perhaps only Zhao Xiaodi was qualified to make Zhang Bubi a guard. Since Zhang Bubi is guarding outside, there must be a rare opportunity in the Spirit Transformation Hall. Yi Guqin thought. He did not alert Zhang Bubi, but withdrew his aura and took a detour to explore from the back of the palace. There are formations. Guchen finally understood why Jean Booby was only guarding the door. Because in the spirit transformation hall, except for the formation at the door, there were still formations left in the other places. But after the passage of time, the power of these formations had greatly decreased and become very fragile. Given Guchen's understanding of formations, he quickly and quietly cracked the formations. He used so close, yet worlds apart, and entered from the back of the spirit transformation hall in a flash. As soon as he entered the hall, Guchen saw that there were many jade bottles stored in the compartments of the hall. Guchen opened one of the jade bottles, and a strong and pure spirit qi rushed out. What pure spirit qi? These pills are all pills to help improve one's cultivation. Guchen's eyes lit up. Although he had received a lot of resources from Sacred Cliff College, but if he wanted to improve his cultivation level, he needed even more resources. Soon, Guchen had plundered all the pills in the several compartments. It's not enough, Guchen murmured. These pills could, at most, improve his cultivation level by a small level. But what Guchen wanted to do was to break through to the divine dwelling stage. Oh, that's right. The vigorous spiritual aura that I felt outside wasn't emitted by these elixirs. Guchen thought about it. In his perception, the strong spirit qi was located at the center of the spirit transformation hall. Guchen did not hesitate and continued to rush in. But before he even got close to the center, waves of strong spirit qi rushed at him. Taking a deep breath was equivalent to taking a pill. Guchen suppressed his presence and quietly approached. The front suddenly opened up to an ancient hall. In the center of the hall was a pool. No, it should not be called a pool, but a spirit liquid pool. Because it was filled with rich, milky white spirit liquid. On the ground, the words Spirit Transformation Pool were carved. This spirit transformation pool must be the greatest opportunity of the spirit transformation hall. Moreover, there was a formation operating at the edge of the spirit transformation pool, which prevented the spirit liquid in the spirit transformation pool from dissipating over time. With the spirit liquid accumulated in the spirit transformation pool over a long period of time, together with the pills I obtained before and some resources in my origin ring, I might be able to break through to the divine dwelling stage. Guchen's heart trembled. This spirit transformation pool was his greatest opportunity to break through to the divine dwelling stage. However, just as Guchen was about to dash out, bubbles suddenly appeared on the surface of the pool. Immediately, a little mermaid-like figure poked her head out. The girl was delicate and charming, with a head of moist, jet-black hair. Her body was petite and sparkling like jade. Her skin was extremely soft and milky white. It's so comfortable. The girl flicked her hair and grinned. Her two small canine teeth added to her cuteness and playfulness. This girl was the little princess of the War God Empire, the girl with monstrous strength, Zhao Xiaodi. Chapter 1063. Even with Guchen's personality, he was slightly stunned. It was not because of the scene of Zhao Xiaodi coming out of the bath. It was because this was the spiritual pool. A great opportunity that could help people break through their cultivation level was used by Zhao Xiaodi as a bathing pool. This was absolutely a waste of God's gift. Even Guchen felt like his heart was bleeding. Even so, Guchen did not plan to give up. He had to obtain the opportunity in the spiritual pool to break through his cultivation level. After making up his mind, Guchen's eyes narrowed and he flashed out. Guchen reached out and directly suppressed Zhao Xiaodi. He had no grudge against Zhao Xiaodi, and Zhao Xiaodi was just a budding girl and the little princess of the War God dynasty. Therefore, Guchen did not plan to hurt her. He only reached out to suppress her. Ah! Who is it? Zhao Xiaodi, who was enjoying the bath, jumped up like a frightened quail. She turned her beautiful eyes and saw Guchen coming to suppress her. It's you, the born Saint Dugawu Bai. You're still alive? Zhao Xiaodi's little face was filled with shock. Back in the Thousand Demon Nest mountain range, she saw Guchen being attacked by Chaohu with her own eyes. After that, in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure, Zhao Xiaodi did not meet Guchen. She also did not go to the Longevity Ancient Tree, so she did not know anything about Guchen. Now that she saw Guchen appear, she was naturally a little shocked. However, after the shock, she was extremely embarrassed. because her entire body was clean and smooth. However, Yi Guqin clearly did not have any other intentions. He just wanted to suppress Zhao Xiaodi so that she would not resist. Your Highness, I'm sorry to offend you. I just need to use the spiritual pool. Yi Guqin's arm locked Zhao Xiaodi's delicate body, trying to suppress her first. Ah! Zhao Xiaodi's face flushed red as she screamed in anger and embarrassment. Dugawu-bai, you big bastard, you big pig trotter. Zhao Xiaodi's delicate body trembled as a monstrous force spread out. Even Yi Guqin was slightly startled. He felt as if a savage beast was struggling in his arms. Without any hesitation, Yi Guqin used his ancient god body. Vigorous ancient god power surged and locked Zhao Xiaodi's movements. How is this possible? Your power? Zhao Xiaodi realized that she couldn't break free from Yi Guqin's restraints. After all, she was an 8th-rank prodigy with a special bloodline. Her strength was unparalleled. In terms of strength, Zhao Xiaodi had never been afraid of anyone. But now, she was being suppressed by Yi Guqin in terms of power. Zhao Xiaodi naturally did not know that Yi Guqin cultivated the ancient god tactics, and was the inheritor of the ancient god clan. Even among the 100 ancient clans in the universe, there were few clans that could surpass the ancient god clan in terms of strength. Therefore, it was not surprising that Zhao Xiaodi was suppressed by Yi Guqin in terms of strength. Zhao Xiaodi struggled violently, but she couldn't break free from Yi Guqin's suppression. Instead, because of her struggle, she had a strange feeling. Your Highness, what's the matter? Just then, Zhang Bubi's voice came from the palace entrance. He heard Zhao Xiaodi's cry and asked, Do you really want to let Zhang Bubi in now? Yi Guqin whispered into Zhao Xiaodi's ear. Zhao Xiaodi's face turned red. If Zhang Bubi came in and saw such an unbearable scene, Zhao Xiaodi would definitely want to die. No, nothing. Without my permission, don't come in. Zhao Xiaodi hurriedly shouted. Got it. At the palace entrance, Zhang Bubi shrugged and continued to guard outside. Okay, bad guy. What do you want? Zhao Xiaodi's face was red, embarrassed and angry. I said, I just want to use the spiritual pool to make a breakthrough. Yi Guqin said indifferently. Okay, I'll give it to you. Can you let go of me now? Zhao Xiaodi gritted her teeth. Sorry, but just in case, I can only seal your cultivation for now. Don't worry, I'll release you after I make a breakthrough. Yi Guqin continued to restrain Zhao Xiaodi with one hand, and put the other hand on Zhao Xiaodi's flat, snow-white abdomen to temporarily seal her spiritual abode. I'll kill you. As the little princess of the war god empire, Zhao Xiaodi had never been wronged like this. She glared at Yi Guqin and raised her eyebrows. She opened her mouth to reveal her silver teeth and 2 shiny canine teeth. Then she bit Yi Guqin's arm hard. However, Yi Guqin immediately activated the flawless body of Vajra. With the help of the ancient god body, his arm glowed with a faint purple-gold color. Zhao Xiaodi bit down and immediately cried out in pain. On my teeth. Zhao Xiaodi pursed her pink lips and teared up. She felt that her teeth were about to fall out. Woo-woo, bad guy. I'm going to tell my father. I'm going to tell my brother. They'll definitely kill you, woo-woo. Zhao Xiaodi started to cry, feeling wronged. Her tears dripped down. After making sure that Zhao Xiaodi couldn't break free in a short time, Yi Guqin also let go of Zhao Xiaodi. Zhao Xiaodi immediately took out a dress from her origin ring and put it on. Finally, she wasn't naked. Then, she stopped crying and glared at Yi Guqin like a little tigress. Sorry, Your Highness, before I make a breakthrough, you'll have to stay here. Yi Guqin sat cross-legged in the spiritual pool, and prepared to make a breakthrough. He wasn't worried that Zhao Xiaodi would cause trouble. Zhao Xiaodi didn't have much power in a short time since her divine dwellings were sealed. After he was ready, Yi Guqin also sat cross-legged in the spiritual pool, and began to make a breakthrough. Humph, Dugawubai, you pig trotter. How dare you use this princess's bathwater to make a breakthrough? This princess will curse you to never make a breakthrough. Zhao Xiaodi's face was full of resentment. Obviously, she wanted to affect Yi Guqin with her words. But with Yi Guqin's temperament, how could he be affected by Zhao Xiaodi's words? He secretly guided the devouring power in his body. In an instant, Yi Guqin's entire body seemed to have turned into a black hole. He greedily devoured and refined the spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool like a whale. Yi Guqin's cultivation base also rose as a result of the refinement, just as Yi Guqin was concentrating on cultivating. However, Zhao Xiaoti's eyes were rolling around. On one hand, she was secretly attacking the divine dwelling seal set by Yi Guqin. On the other hand, she was secretly sending a message to another person. Although Zhao Xiaoti had always been disgusted by that person's pursuit. But now, it seemed to be a good choice to let him deal with the hateful guy in front of her. In another palace ruin in the Sacred Empire's treasure trove, a handsome young man dressed in a brocade robe, wearing a golden crown on his head, and holding a golden folding fan in his hand, was plundering opportunities. He was a false saint expert of the war god empire, the son of the heroic marquis. He was ranked 7th on the war god list, and was known as the heroic marquis. His name was Zhongshan. At this moment, Zhongshan received a message, and his handsome face instantly lit up with joy. Her Highness sent me a message. Zhongshan was overjoyed. He had been pursuing Zhao Xiaoti, but there had been no results. However, when he saw the content of the message, Zhongshan's face instantly lit up with anger. Damn it, that damn Dugawu Bai, a trash who isn't even at the divine dwelling stage, dares to provoke the little princess. Wait for me to teach him a lesson. Although Zhongshan had heard some rumors about Yi Guqin, he always felt that it was a false rumor and could not be taken seriously. He closed the folding fan in his hand with a snap, and his figure turned into a stream of light and sped away. Chapter 1064. Just as Zhongshan was rushing towards the spirit transformation hall, Yi Guqin was also completely immersed in his cultivation, and only spared a wisp of his mind to stare at Zhao Xiaoti. Can't break through, can't break through, can't break through. Zhao Xiaoti muttered with a bitter face, constantly cursing Yi Guqin for not being able to break through. However, boom! Yi Guqin's body shook, and a surge of essential qi burst out. His cultivation level, from Tiandi Lingxiao, broke through to the 8th stage. He broke through just like that? Zhao Xiaoti's pretty eyes widened in disbelief. Even with the assistance of the spirit transformation pool, it was absolutely not that easy to refine such a vast amount of spirit qi. At least Zhao Xiaoti was unable to break through in a short period of time. But how would she know that Yi Guqin possessed the power of devouring, and that his dantian contained the existence of the ancient demon sword, the devourer god? Therefore, Yi Guqin did not feel the slightest pressure to refine any spirit liquid, elixir, sacred medicine, and so on. He could quickly absorb and transform them. Yi Guqin's figure was still motionless. The 8th stage of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge was not his goal. Next, Yi Guqin continued to frantically absorb the power of the spirit transformation pool. The height of the spirit transformation pool was also decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a few moments, it had decreased by half. This Dugawu Bai, to break through a small stage, he needs to consume such a huge amount of spirit qi? Zhao Xiaoti was momentarily surprised, but also temporarily threw her shame and anger to the back of her mind. The amount of spirit qi that Yi Guqin needed to break through a small stage was most likely comparable to the amount of spirit qi that an ordinary heaven's pride needed to break through to the divine dwelling stage. What a monster! His strength is greater than mine, and he needs so much spirit qi to break through. Zhao Xiaoti stared at the rapidly decreasing spirit transformation pool, feeling like her heart was dripping blood. Although it was true that she was bathing in it, Zhao Xiaoti also intended to collect the spirit liquid in it later. But now, Yi Guqin had taken advantage of all of this. Despicable Dugawu Bai! How dare you drink this princess bathwater? Helpless, Zhao Xiaoti could only console himself with a mental victory. Not long after, Yi Guqin's body once again surged with majestic genuine qi. He had broken through to the 9th level of the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge. What comes next is the most important. Yi Guqin's expression turned serious. Breaking through a small realm wasn't a big deal, but the Heaven and Earth Spirit Bridge to the divine dwelling stage was a major hurdle. If he could break through, Yi Guqin's strength would undoubtedly skyrocket. Only then would they truly have the confidence to compete with Jian Kuei, Hua Wuxiao, Princess Luoho, and the others for the fruits of sacred Tao. Come! Without much hesitation, Yi Guchen once again entered a meditative state, preparing to break through. Yi Guchen was not one to be afraid of the slightest thing. He needed to be courageous and diligent in his cultivation. He began to refine it again. This time, the spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool was consumed even faster. Seeing this, Zhao Xiaoti's heart ached. Yi Guchen's cultivation had also gradually climbed to the divine dwelling stage. It's not enough. Yi Guchen sensed the situation and found that the spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool was slightly insufficient. The spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool had accumulated for so many years, but it was barely enough to push Yi Guchen's cultivation to the divine dwelling stage. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was for Yi Guchen to break through. Without hesitation, Yi Guchen once again took out the spirit pills he had plundered in the palace, refined them all, and integrated them into his dantian. It's not enough. Yi Guchen once again took out various pills from his origin ring. He even took out 2 precious sacred medicines. These were resources given to him by Sacred Cliff College. Is this Dugawu by crazy? He needs so many resources to break through? Zhao Xiaoti was a little dumbfounded. Even when she broke through to the divine dwelling stage, she didn't consume so many resources. Rumble. As the numerous resources were refined by Yi Guchen, the bottleneck of his divine dwelling stage also began to loosen. In his dantian, rich true qi transformed into liquid and surged violently. Vaguely, it seemed as if a divine dwelling was about to appear. Yi Guchen completely activated his devouring power, sucking up the last drop of spiritual liquid in the spiritual pool. In addition to the power of the pills and sacred medicines, all of them were absorbed into his dantian. There was a rumble. Yi Guchen's dantian, as if it was splitting the sky and earth, produced a loud rumble. An illusory divine dwelling was finally formed. An unprecedented power surged out from the divine dwelling, flowing to Yi Guchen's limbs and bones. A wave of qi burst out from Yi Guchen's body, causing the entire spiritual hall to rumble and shake violently. Is this the power of breaking through to the divine dwelling stage? Zhao Xiaoti's beautiful eyes widened. The commotion caused by Yi Guchen's breakthrough had completely stunned her. She felt that the current Yi Guchen seemed to have become a divine king. It was only then that Zhao Xiaoti understood the meaning of the so-called natural saint. The rumbling waves naturally alarmed Zhan Bubi, who was guarding outside. What's going on? This aura, is Her Highness cultivating? Isn't it too shocking? Zhan Bubi's face was full of surprise. At this moment, a stream of light suddenly flashed in the distance. It was a handsome young man in a brocade robe. It was the young Marquis Zhongshan, who had rushed over after hearing the news. Well, Zhongshan, why are you here? Zhan Bubi frowned when he saw the person. He remembered that Zhao Xiaoti seemed to dislike the young Marquis. Zhan Bubi, you're really stupid. Her Highness has been kidnapped, and you're still standing outside like a fool. Zhongshan angrily rebuked, brushing past Zhan Bubi and entering the hall. What? Zhan Bubi was also taken aback. He also turned around and stepped into the hall. In the center of the hall, the entire dried-up spiritual pool shattered, and the surrounding formations were completely obliterated by the shock waves. Yi Guchen withdrew his aura. He felt that his strength was unprecedentedly strong. Is this the feeling of the divine dwelling stage? Yi Guchen muttered to himself. It was impossible to understand this feeling without breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. The difference between the heaven and earth spirit bridge stage and the divine dwelling stage was very big. Even if Yi Guchen had used the sky-devouring secret technique to forcibly raise the amount of his qi to the divine dwelling stage, there was still a difference between it and the real divine dwelling stage. Now, even if I don't use the sky-devouring secret technique, I can easily contend with Wuxia and other heaven prides. If I use the sky-devouring secret technique, I can even suppress them. Even if it's the mysterious Jian Kuei, I don't have to be too afraid. At least he can't pose a fatal threat to me. Yi Guchen roughly measured his strength. It had increased by more than several times. In short, it was an all-round improvement. Unfortunately, although I have condensed a divine dwelling, it is still incomplete. I still need to practice the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra, pass the 4 tribulations of earth, water, fire, and wind, and shatter my divine dwelling again and again. Yi Guqin didn't forget one of his greatest trump cards, the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra. The quality of the divine dwelling was divided into incomplete, flawless, leakless, and the legendary world. Yi Guqin's ambition was not just to condense a divine dwelling. He wanted to condense the highest quality divine dwelling. Just as Yi Guqin was deep in thought, a rumbling sound was heard. Zhao Xiaodi had finally broken the seal of the divine dwelling and recovered her strength. She ground her sparkling little canine teeth, staring at Yi Guqin with a fierce expression. At the same time, Zhong Shan and Zhang Bubi also arrived. "Oh, just right, I want to know how strong I am now." Looking at the three people, Yi Guqin not only didn't show the slightest fear, but instead revealed a faint smile. Chapter 1065. Yi Guqin just happened to want to measure his strength as a divine dwelling expert. The arrival of Zhongshan and the others gave Yi Guqin this opportunity. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Zhongshan's gaze fell on Zhao Xiaodi as soon as he arrived. Although Zhao Xiaodi was only 13 years old, she would be able to talk about marriage in 2 years. And Zhongshan was one of Zhao Xiaodi's most loyal suitors. But at this moment, Zhongshan saw that although Zhao Xiaodi's face was filled with anger, there was still a faint blush on her cheeks, which made her look even more adorable. "No, I'm fine. Suppress this abominable big bad guy." Zhao Xiaodi's beautiful eyes flashed with panic. She didn't want to reveal the embarrassing things that happened between her and Yi Guqin. She was still an unmarried maiden. However, seeing Zhao Xiaodi's reaction, Zhongshan increasingly felt that something was wrong. Something seemed to have happened between the two of them. At the thought of this, Zhongshan became a little upset, and he couldn't help but become angrier. He stared coldly at Yi Guqin. "You're the Sword Dynasty's natural saint, Duga Wubai. You're really lucky to not die in the beast tide, but now, you dare to provoke the princess. You're courting death." Zhongshan shouted coldly. He naturally wanted to show off in front of Zhao Xiaodi. To the side, Zhang Bubi was also a little taken aback. He didn't expect Yi Guqin to be here. But compared to Zhongshan, he was more wary of Yi Guqin. After all, he had seen Yi Guqin fight in the ancient chaos wasteland with his own eyes. Yi Guqin wasn't weak at that time, and now that he had broken through, he must be even stronger. In the face of the hostility of Zhongshan and the others, Yi Guqin's expression was extremely indifferent. He just happened to lack a punching bag. "If you want to fight, then come." Yi Guqin smiled faintly. "Do you think you're fearless after breaking through to the divine dwelling stage? Ridiculous." Zhongshan was eager to show off in front of Zhao Xiaodi, so he did not hesitate to attack. In his view, Yi Guqin had just broken through to the divine dwelling stage, and his aura and cultivation level must be unstable. Therefore, his chances of winning were very high. But what he didn't know was that Yi Guqin's cultivation had always been steady and steady. Even though he had just broken through to the divine dwelling stage, his aura was still very steady and stable. Zhongshan flipped the golden folding fan in his hand, and it transformed into a gorgeous thin sword, thrusting towards Yi Guqin's chest. Yi Guqin held the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. Vigorous true qi burst out from the divine palace in his dantian, and poured into the sword. In an instant, the 9-dragon thunder prison seemed to have awakened. The entire longsword emitted endless lightning. 1 head, 2, 3 heads. A total of 5 lightning dragon souls appeared from the 9-dragon lightning prison sword. Obviously, with Yi Guqin's current strength, he could fully exert the power of a quasi-tribulation divine weapon. Divine sword lightning controlling art, myriad lightning transformations. The soul of the 5 thunder dragons swept towards Zhongshan along with the terrifying thunder and lightning sword. In an instant, Zhongshan's expression changed drastically. He felt the powerful power of Yi Guqin's move. How is this possible? Zhongshan couldn't help but exclaim. The next moment, the clanging of swords colliding rang out, and at the same time, a figure vomited blood and was sent flying. The person who vomited blood was Zhongshan. At this moment, Zhongshan's arm was charred black, and blood was spurting from the corners of his mouth. His eyes were wide open, and his heart couldn't help but set off stormy waves. Zhongshan's strength was indeed not weak. He was also a heaven's pride of the second layer of the divine dwelling stage. His strength was not at the top among the heaven prides of the four empires, but he was at least in the upper echelons. But he was injured in a single blow from Yi Guqin. This. Zhao Xiaoti's little mouth also opened, and her beautiful eyes were somewhat dazed. She didn't expect Yi Guqin to have such strength as soon as he broke through to the divine dwelling stage. Sorry, I didn't control my strength well. Yi Guqin shook his head. He had just broken through and hadn't fully adapted to his powerful qi, so he didn't control his strength too well. But these words were incomparably harsh to Zhongshan's ears, like an extreme humiliation. I absolutely don't believe you. What are you so arrogant for? Zhongshan's face was ugly. He gathered the powerful qi in his body and slashed out again. Yi Guqin also swept out with his sword. Puchi. However, the result was the same. Zhongshan was sent flying again, vomiting blood. Come at me together, Yi Guqin said with a faint smile. Zhongshan alone couldn't measure his true strength. Damn it. Zhongshan's face was anxious and angry. He wanted to show off in front of Zhao Xiaoti, but he didn't expect to be in such a sorry state. Dugawubai, you've gone too far. Zhan Bubi also attacked. The two of them joined forces to deal with Yi Guqin. However, Yi Guqin's strength had increased greatly after breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. His sword swept out, and the souls of the 5 thunder dragons roared and swept out with endless thunder and lightning. Any sword move that Yi Guqin used was several times more powerful than before. There was no suspense. Zhongshan, who was ranked 7th on the war god list, and Zhan Bubi, who was ranked 10th on the war god list, were still sent flying by Yi Guqin. I don't believe it. Zhao Xiaoti gritted her teeth. Zhongshan and Zhan Bubi couldn't defeat Yi Guqin even after joining forces. It was a disgrace to the war god dynasty. Zhao Xiaoti took out her signature golden hammer and joined the battle as well. Good timing. Yi Guqin smiled when he saw this. He fought with the 3 of them again. Zhao Xiaoti swung the golden hammer with her small hand. Every strike was as heavy as Mount Tai. Ordinary people might not be able to withstand this mountain-like power. But Yi Guqin, who was supported by the power of the ancient gods, wasn't afraid in the slightest. After a round of fighting, Yi Guqin used the 3 ultimate moves of the 3 ultimate moves of the Holy Sword, Moon Falling Star Sinking Vast Sunbreak, and sent the 3 of them flying. Zhao Xiaoti sat on the ground and cried out in grievance, "Stop fighting. You two trash can't defeat Dugawubai, even if you join forces." Your Highness, this. Zhongshan's face alternated between green and white. He was extremely embarrassed. The way he looked at Yi Guqin was also faintly filled with resentment. But he didn't dare to do anything because he was afraid that Yi Guqin would do something to him. Do you still want to fight? Yi Guqin said indifferently with the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand. He had more or less measured his own strength and had completely grasped the power of the divine dwelling stage. Therefore, Yi Guqin didn't intend to delay any longer. Dugawubai, do you know that my father, the heroic Marshal Marquis, is still outside? How dare you treat me like this? Zhongshan brought up his background when he saw that he couldn't defeat Yi Guqin. Having a father who was a false saint expert should make Yi Guqin a little wary. However, Zhongshan was wrong. Are you threatening me? The smile on Yi Guqin's face faded, and his eyes turned cold. Swoosh. In the next moment, Yi Guqin dashed toward Mount Zhong. Dugawubai, how dare you? Zhongshan's face suddenly changed and he turned pale with fright. Puchi. The 9-dragon thunder prison pierced through Zhongshan's shoulder. Yi Guqin stomped his foot, breaking several of Zhongshan's ribs. Blood gushed out from Zhongshan's mouth, and his body twitched uncontrollably. I'm not afraid of threats, Yi Guqin said with an indifferent expression. Chapter 1066. Blood kept gushing out of Zhongshan's mouth and he couldn't speak clearly. His face was frighteningly pale. Big bad guy, don't kill him. Zhao Xiaoti cried out. Although she hated Zhongshan, Zhongshan was the son of the heroic Marquis and also a genius of the war god dynasty. As the princess of the war god dynasty, Zhao Xiaoti couldn't turn a blind eye to him. Hearing Zhao Xiaoti's voice, Yi Guqin's expression softened. No matter what, Zhao Xiaodi was the one who found the spiritual pool first. Yi Guchen had overtaken her. Therefore, Yi Guchen would give Zhao Xiaodi face. He didn't have a particularly big grudge with the War God dynasty. But if he offended Zhao Xiaodi too much, there would be some trouble in the future battlefield of geniuses. Yi Guchen wasn't afraid of trouble, but there was no need to cause more trouble. I'll let you go for Zhao Xiaodi's sake, but... Yi Guchen paused and directly took the vitality ring from Zhongshan's finger. You. Zhongshan almost fainted when he saw that. Yi Guchen checked Zhongshan's vitality ring. There were a lot of resources in it. Just the heaven crystals alone were as many as 1,000,000. Not to mention the many resources that Zhongshan had painstakingly plundered from the sacred dynasty's treasure, such as elixirs, old herbs, crystals, minerals, and so on. There were even 2 ordinary sacred herbs, which was a pleasant surprise. You have to pay the price for saying the wrong thing, don't you think? Yi Guchen didn't hold back at all, and plundered all the resources in Zhongshan's vitality ring. More blood gushed out of Zhongshan's mouth when he saw that. This meant that he had worked for nothing in the sacred dynasty's treasure. All the resources had been plundered by Yi Guchen. All right, farewell everyone, Yi Guchen said lightly. He had to hurry up and find other opportunities. Wait. Zhao Xiaodi gritted her teeth and stared at Yi Guchen angrily. Is there anything else? Yi Guchen asked. Zhao Xiaodi puffed up her cheeks and said, You took my spirit-dissolving pool and used it to break through. Now you want to leave just like that? Then what does your highness want? Yi Guchen asked. Zhao Xiaodi turned around and looked at Zhongshan and the others. You two leave first, I don't need you anymore. Zhongshan stood up with difficulty and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His face was pale as he looked coldly at Yi Guchen, but he didn't dare to say anything. He could only leave with a heart full of grievances. Zhan Bubi was also very tactful. He did not provoke Yi Guchen and turned to leave. Soon, only Zhao Xiaodi and Yi Guchen were left in the hall. I want you to agree to 2 of my requests. Zhao Xiaodi placed her hands on her waist and said. Tell me about it, Yi Guchen said. First, you are not allowed to mention what happened before to anyone. Zhao Xiaodi's face flushed red as she recalled the scene of her naked body being locked up by Yi Guchen. She was a little embarrassed. She was the little princess of the War God dynasty. Her status was incomparably noble. Normal men didn't even have the right to touch her. Yi Guchen was the first man to have such intimate contact with Zhao Xiaodi. If this shocking news were to spread, even her father, the Heaven War Emperor, would come looking for trouble with Yi Guchen. Don't worry about that. I wouldn't do something so despicable. Yi Guchen shook his head and laughed. He didn't have any big grudges with Zhao Xiaodi. Even if they were mortal enemies, Yi Guchen would only defeat them head-on, and would not use such underhanded methods. That's good. Zhao Xiaodi's expression softened. She continued. The second request is that I want to follow you. Yi Guchen was puzzled. Humph. You took away the fortune of the spirit pool, and caused this princess to suffer a loss. From now on, I will follow you, and I want a share of the fortune. Zhao Xiaodi's beautiful eyes rolled around. In reality, Zhao Xiaodi was feeling a little guilty. With Yi Guchen's current strength, she couldn't force him to follow her. If she angered Yi Guchen, it was possible that he would directly suppress her. However, Zhao Xiaodi wasn't willing to let the opportunity of the spirit pool be taken away from her. A faint smile appeared on Yi Guchen's face as he looked at Zhao Xiaodi. Zhao Xiaodi felt a little guilty under Yi Guchen's stare. So she said in a strong voice, What's wrong? Can't I? This request isn't too much. After all, you've consumed the entire spiritual pool by yourself. With this in mind, Zhao Xiaodi felt wronged. She pouted and tears welled up in her eyes. Yi Guchen didn't say anything and turned around to leave. Seeing this, Zhao Xiaodi tentatively followed behind Yi Guchen. Seeing that Yi Guchen didn't say anything to stop her, Zhao Xiaodi's expression immediately changed, revealing a sly smile. Hee. With the strength that Dugu Wubai has shown, I can do whatever I want in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove, Zhao Xiaodi said with a mischievous smile. The reason why Yi Guchen acquiesced was because he had indeed snatched Zhao Xiaodi's opportunity. Moreover, Yi Guchen had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, which could be considered as having achieved one of his goals. As for the battle for the Sword Sun position, as long as he could obtain the Saint Dao fruit, it wouldn't hurt to let Zhao Xiaodi have a share of the remaining opportunities. Next, Zhao Xiaodi followed Yi Guqin to search for opportunities in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. In another place, outside the Thousand Demon Nest mountain range, a purple-winged bat dragon descended from the sky. Standing on the bat dragon's back was a purple-haired Heaven's Pride. He wore a purple mask on his face, and his imposing manner was high and mighty. He had a powerful aura that could devour mountains and rivers. It was the mysterious Heaven's Pride ranked first on the sword list Z. As he landed in the mountain range, some demonic beasts also gathered around. But a roar from the purple-winged bat dragon sent chills down the demonic beast's spines, causing them to flee in all directions. The entrance to the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove is just ahead. Z steered the purple-winged bat dragon and landed at the entrance of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. The next battle is going to be interesting. Z's body rose into the air, and then in a flash he swept through the entrance of the treasure trove. The purple-winged bat dragon soared back into the sky. The Heaven's Prides of the 4 empires in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove were unaware that a super-powerful Heaven's Pride had joined the Heaven's Pride battle. One could imagine that Z's arrival would cause a huge change to the situation in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. Yi Guqin was also unaware of the mysterious Heaven's Pride's arrival. He was now searching for resources with Zhao Xiaodi. Along the way, Yi Guqin had also plundered many palaces, and there was no lack of precious resources among them. Yi Guqin was not stingy either, and half of them were taken by Zhao Xiaodi. Zhao Xiaodi's face no longer had the grievance from before, and her eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Mine, they're all mine. Zhao Xiaodi was like a greedy little female dragon as she plundered the treasures. Yi Guqin was not bothered by it either. The most important thing to him now was the fruit of the sacred path, and the last thing he needed to refine his clone, the crystallized soul source. After plundering another palace, Yi Guqin and Zhao Xiaodi walked out. At this time, there were some Heaven's Prides in the distance, rushing towards a certain place in the depths of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. Yi Guqin immediately stepped forward and stopped them. What happened? Yi Guqin asked. That Heaven's Pride had just shown anger on his face when he saw Yi Guqin and Zhao Xiaodi clearly. The Sword Dynasty's natural saint, and the War God Dynasty's little princess? That genius was taken aback. These two were extremely reputable figures. But how did they get together? I'm asking you a question. What happened? Zhao Xiaodi shouted. It seems that a Heaven's Pride coincidentally activated a certain array and made a sacred palace appear. That Heaven's Pride did not dare to not answer. Sacred palace. Yi Guqin's eyes revealed a strange look, and his heart skipped a beat. Sacred palace, with the word saint in it, might be related to a saint. Was the greatest opportunity in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove finally about to appear? Chapter 1067. Yi Guqin had not forgotten that the greatest opportunity in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove was the Saint Dao fruit. Although the Saint Dao fruit was useless to Yi Guqin now, he needed to use the Saint Dao fruit to win the Sword Sun seat. He had even promised Leng Qianhen that if possible, he would help him get a Saint Dao fruit. And the name of the sacred palace seemed to be related to the heavenly tribulation saints. It might be the greatest opportunity in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. So Yi Guqin naturally would not miss it. Soon, Yi Guqin and Zhao Xiaodi locked onto the location of the sacred palace after some inquiries. At this moment, almost all the heaven prides of the 4 empires in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove were converging towards the sacred palace. It was easy to imagine that there would be a fierce battle between dragons and tigers in the future. After about half an hour, Yi Guqin finally approached the location of the sacred palace. Is the sacred palace in front? Yi Guqin looked around and saw an incomparably magnificent and ancient giant palace, located in the deepest part of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure trove. Although it had been sealed and baptized by time, the palace still stood tall and majestic, as if it had witnessed the glory of the ancient ruins Sacred Dynasty. At the same time, Yi Guqin could also vaguely feel that there seemed to be an array formation fluctuation at the bottom of the sacred palace. although the array formation fluctuation was very weak and still. But Yi Guchen still had a faint feeling of apprehension. It seems that the sacred palace is not that simple, Yi Guchen thought to himself. While he was thinking, there were many whooshing sounds around him. It was obvious that most of the heaven prides in the sacred dynasty's treasure trove were converging towards the sacred palace. Yi Guchen's footsteps flashed as he approached the sacred palace. At this moment, a large group of heaven prides had already gathered outside the sacred palace. They were all bombarding the gate of the sacred palace. The gate of the sacred palace was more than 10 feet tall and had a mottled bronze color. Even without the protection of the array formation, it was still incomparably sturdy. Even if the divine dwelling heaven prides joined forces, it would be difficult to break it in a short time. Yi Guchen had just arrived outside the temple when he saw some familiar faces. The geniuses of Sacred Cliff College and Tianxian College were among them. Jian Jinghong, Kempo, and Jian Shursan were also present. Senior brother Dugu is here. A Sacred Cliff College disciple noticed Yi Guchen. Master. Mu Xingzu and the others were also pleasantly surprised. After recuperating by the longevity ancient tree, they continued to search for opportunities together. Then they went all the way to the sacred palace. Yi Guchen stepped forward and exchanged some pleasantries. Master. Mu Xingzu looked at Zhao Xiaodi. Why is the little princess of the War God Empire following senior brother Dugu? The surrounding Sacred Cliff College disciples were also surprised. There were even some people who had looks of admiration on their faces. As expected of senior brother Dugu, he can even tame the little tigress of the War God Empire. Some disciples lowered their voices and praised. What did you say? Say it again. Zhao Xiaodi seemed to have heard some of the discussion. She widened her eyes and waved her fist threateningly. No, nothing. The disciples hurriedly retreated. Although Zhao Xiaodi was young, her strange strength was unparalleled. Everyone was afraid of her. Alright, stop fooling around. It seems that this sacred palace should be the greatest opportunity in the sacred dynasty's treasury. Yi Guchen waved his hand. Indeed, if there is a sacred Dao fruit, it might only exist in this sacred palace, Kempo said. The sacred Dao fruit was a great opportunity that the four dynasties were fighting for. It was related to the birth of a heavenly tribulation saint. Although a false saint who refined the sacred Dao fruit might not necessarily be able to survive the heavenly tribulation, but at least the possibility would greatly increase. Yi Guchen also saw Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao and other heaven prides in the crowd outside the sacred palace. They were all staring coldly at Yi Guchen. Yi Guchen's aura was restrained at this moment, so they didn't notice that Yi Guchen had broken through to the divine dwelling stage. In addition, Zhongshan and Zhan Bubi also came here. When he saw Zhao Xiaodi safely following Yi Guchen, Zhongshan trembled with jealousy. But he wasn't a fool, and he didn't dare to provoke Yi Guchen again. It was just that he felt like he had seen someone cuckold him with his own eyes. Although Zhao Xiaodi had never had anything to do with Zhongshan, Zhongshan had already decided that Zhao Xiaodi was his. Dugu Wubai, although I can't deal with you, you are now the target of public criticism, Zhongshan said viciously. He also knew that Yi Guchen had made enemies on all sides. Not to mention Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao and the others. Even the heaven prides of the Sword Dynasty, such as Jian Kuei, Hua Wuxia and the others, also had a huge grudge against Yi Guchen. Therefore, Zhongshan believed that even if he couldn't deal with Yi Guchen, the others could kill Yi Guchen. Haha, found it. At this moment, a hearty laugh sounded. Hearing this voice, the faces of Kempo and the others darkened. In the distance, a group of people led by Jian Kuei had arrived. In addition to the several sword sons of the aristocratic family camp, Hua Wuxiu Yinju, Shengguan Jingshan and the others were all there. Hua Xingjie, Yu Shuangyan Yin Wufeng and the others also followed closely behind. It could be said that among the four dynasties present, the Sword Dynasty had the most heaven prides. Unfortunately, the itinerant cultivators and the aristocratic family camp were like fire and water. Although the other three dynasties did not have the advantage in terms of numbers, they were all elites and had the ability to fight. Let me do it. Jian Kuei arrived and first glanced coldly at Yi Guchen and the others. then walked directly to the gate of the sacred hall. The cold eyes under the bronze mask also revealed a trace of an unusual fluctuation. "Open for me." Jiankui's aura burst forth as he raised the bronze pagoda in his hand. The entire bronze pagoda turned into a ray of green light and hit the gate of the sacred hall. Then, with a violent boom, the gate of the sacred hall was directly smashed open by the bronze pagoda. It actually opened? There was an uproar in the surroundings. Even Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao and the other top heaven prides of the other dynasties looked serious. Jiankui's strength was indeed very frightening. However, Yi Guqin frowned slightly. Others might not have noticed, but Yi Guqin did. When the bronze pagoda hit the gate, it faintly released a wave of fluctuation. Rather than saying that the gate of the sacred hall was smashed open, it was more accurate to say that it was opened by the bronze pagoda. What methods does this Jiankui have, and who is he? Yi Guqin could not understand, but he became even more vigilant. After the gate of the sacred hall opened, Jiankui was the first to rush in. Then, all the heaven prides of the four dynasties rushed in like a swarm of bees. Yi Guqin and the others naturally did not want to fall behind, and also rushed in. There was a path in the sacred hall that led straight to the deepest part. All the heaven prides were wholeheartedly flying towards the depths of the path. And the attentive Yi Guqin was observing the walls on both sides of the path as his footsteps flashed. There were some murals on the walls. Among them, there was no lack of blurry figures with unparalleled majesty that were worshipped by thousands of people. Is that the saint of the ancient ruins Celestial Saint Dynasty? Yi Guqin muttered to himself. At that moment, Yi Guqin suddenly saw one of the murals. A saint with a blurry and majestic face was sitting cross-legged on a pagoda. What concerned Yi Guqin was that saint only had 4 fingers on his left hand. He was missing a little finger. Chapter 1068. That's... Yi Guqin took a closer look and found that he was right. The saint depicted on the mural indeed had only 4 fingers on his left hand, and he was missing a little finger. In addition, he was sitting cross-legged on a pagoda. Yi Guqin couldn't help but think of a person. Jianku. But, how was this possible? Is it just a coincidence? Yi Guqin felt a little incredulous. How could Jiankui have anything to do with the saint of the ruined Sky Holy Dynasty? The two shouldn't have anything to do with each other. Yi Guqin asked Su Qingyu in his heart. Senior Su, can a saint's primordial spirit be reincarnated? Su Qingyu's voice immediately sounded. It shouldn't be possible. At least, I've never seen the so-called reincarnation. Although a heavenly tribulation saint has great power and a long lifespan, he's not immortal. Even if his physical body is destroyed, his primordial spirit can still exist for a long time, but it can't exist forever. A heavenly tribulation saint was already an extraordinary existence and could survive without a physical body. But there were conditions. For example, Yingning could maintain her primordial spirit because of the immortal soul pearl. Su Qingyu could maintain his primordial spirit with the soul-storing coffin and the nourishment of Yi Guqin's chaotic soul power. But if there were no conditions, even a saint's primordial spirit would slowly be exhausted over time. As for the reincarnation of the primordial spirit, it was too ridiculous. At least Su Qingyu hadn't seen it. Really? Yi Guqin thought to himself. Was it really just a coincidence? Or Jiankui once got some opportunities of the ruined Sky Holy Dynasty by chance, such as the Bronze Pagoda? Yi Guqin thought. This was indeed a possibility. More importantly, Jiankui's identity. Kenpo had also said that Jiankui wasn't a member of the 5 fake saint families. Then what was his identity? Everything was a puzzle. Forget it. I'll take it one step at a time. Since we're already here, even if there's a mystery, it should be revealed soon. Yi Guqin shook off his chaotic thoughts and focused on what was before him. The most important thing now was to explore the temple. The prodigies continued to venture deeper into the sacred palace. At this moment, the passage ahead suddenly opened up. It was an extremely vast space. Among them, there were densely packed dark golden statues. These dark golden statues were in the shape of humans and beasts. They filled the entire space. The entrance to the back of the temple was behind the group of dark golden statues. Looking at these dark golden statues that resembled terracotta soldiers, all the sky prides stopped in their tracks. Yi Guchen's eyes flashed. These statues reminded him of the bronze knight puppets in the great tomb of the ancient chaos wasteland. However, compared to those puppets, those dark golden statues gave off an even more oppressive feeling. Everyone, you've already come this far. Could it be that you still want to retreat? Jiankui said. We can charge forward together. As for whether we can make it through, it's up to fate, Wuxia said. Everyone present had reached a consensus. Then, everyone got up and charged forward. Just as the prodigies dashed out, the dark golden statues indeed began to move. Many ancient runes and patterns appeared on the surface of each statue, as if they were activating a spell. Swoosh! A dark golden statue wielding a giant sword slashed horizontally, directly slicing a prodigy in half. Blood splattered everywhere. The honorable realm. The strength of these statues is almost comparable to the honorable realm. Another prodigy exclaimed. Although these dark golden statues could not use true qi, their sturdy bodies and strength were almost comparable to the honorable realm. No, even soul attacks are useless this time. A prodigy exclaimed. Previously, when they were at the longevity ancient tree, Yi Guchen realized that soul attacks were very effective against the ancient corpses. Therefore, there were also prodigies who tried to use soul attacks, but to no avail. We can only force our way through. Yi Guchen's face turned serious as he summoned the 9-dragon thunder prison. Poof! 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 Prodigies were constantly being killed around them. The prodigies were only a few hundred feet away from the entrance at the back of the sacred palace. Normally they could reach it in a moment. But now, it had become a road of death. Even Sacred Cliff College's disciples had fallen. All disciples below the divine dwelling stage, leave quickly. Yi Guchen shouted as he turned around. In such a situation, even the divine dwelling stage prodigies were in danger, let alone the heaven and earth spirit bridge prodigies. Hearing Yi Guchen's words, some Sacred Cliff College disciples gritted their teeth, turned around and retreated. Opportunities were indeed important, but life was more important. Even Kong Kong, Han Lingxian, and the others did not move forward. Instead, they turned around and retreated. In the entire Sacred Cliff College, only Yi Guchen, Ling Emoshu, Ling Mayin, and Xuanlian continued to move forward. Tianxian College only had Mu Xingzhu and Suki Miyazaki. Of course, the unaffiliated cultivator camp also had Jian Jinghong, Kempo, Jian Shursan, and the others. The aristocratic family camp was more or less the same. The prodigies of the other 3 empires had either fallen or fled. Only a small number of top prodigies were able to make it through. Yi Guchen used wave-like subtle steps, flashing between the numerous statues. He did not reveal his divine dwelling stage cultivation, but treated it as a trump card that could be revealed when necessary. Only then would it have an unexpected effect. In the end, Yi Guchen and the others finally reached the back of the sacred palace. The dark golden statues seemed to have a range of movement that they could not escape from. Jian Kuei and the others naturally rushed out. They did not stop at all, and directly entered the entrance. Yi Guchen was not willing to fall behind, and continued to go deeper. After about a quarter of an hour, everyone finally reached the deepest part of the sacred palace. As soon as they entered, everyone's breathing seemed to stop. Inside the sacred palace, there was a giant triangular building that looked like a pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid, there were 7 figures sitting cross-legged. These 7 figures seemed to have died, and they were motionless. But their power was still not extinguished, as if they were sitting cross-legged at the top of all living beings, overlooking the changes in the clouds. The remains of heavenly tribulation saints. Without the slightest doubt, all the heaven prides present immediately came to this conclusion. Those 7 silhouettes were definitely saints of the heavenly tribulation. And the greatest opportunity in the sacred palace's treasure trove, the Saint Tao fruit, was very likely to exist in these 7 saint remains. Everyone's eyes turned red at the thought of the Saint Tao fruit. It was the crystal left behind by a saint. As long as they obtained it, even if they couldn't use it themselves, they could give it to the elders behind them or the empire behind them. The rewards they would receive would be immeasurable. Even an indifferent woman like Princess Luo, Ho couldn't help breathing a little faster at this moment. If she could obtain a Saint Dao fruit for the Mo Luo Empire, it was possible to create a heavenly tribulation saint for the Mo Luo Empire. The eyes of the heaven prides of the various empires turned red. Chapter 1069. Even the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty felt the same, let alone the other three dynasties. The sage fruit was related to the position of the Sword Sun. Compared to the fortuitous opportunities he had plundered earlier, the sage Dao fruit was far more important. It could even be said that as long as one could obtain a sage fruit, that would almost guarantee that one could become the Sword Sun. A sage fruit and the position of Sword Sun. At this moment, none of the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty could hold themselves back. Go! All the prodigies rushed toward the pyramid at once. There was no modesty, no scruples, and no mercy. Everyone used all their strength to rush to the top of the pyramid. Just as they stepped into the pyramid, a transparent shockwave suddenly spread out. All the prodigies who stepped into the pyramid felt as if Mount Tai was pressing down on them. Their movements immediately slowed down as if they had stepped into a swamp. Damn it, this pyramid has a suppressive force. Some of the prodigies had ugly expressions. Fortunately, all the prodigies were suppressed at the same time. However, Jian Kuei's lips curled into a sneer. The bronze pagoda in his hand shook. Similarly, a wave of energy spread out and dissipated part of the suppressive force of the transparent shockwave. His speed increased by a notch. What did Jian Kuei do? We can't let him take the lead. Some of the prodigies roared. Jian Kuei, you want the sage fruit? Dream on. Jian Jinghong shouted coldly as he pointed a finger between his eyebrows. The heavenly sword scar spread out a mysterious heavenly Dao intent, which also dissipated part of the suppressive force. With a flip of his hand, Jian Jinghong summoned his long sword and charged towards Jian Kuei. Jian Jinghong, don't be so arrogant. Jian 2, Jian 3, Jian 4, Jian 6, and the other sword sons of the aristocratic families also attacked at the same time. Don't be arrogant. Kenpo and the other sword sons of the itinerant cultivators also attacked at the same time. As the battle of the Sword Dynasty erupted, it seemed to have caused a chain reaction. The geniuses of the four great dynasties immediately engaged in a chaotic battle. You hit me, I hit you. Those prodigies who had a grudge against each other took this opportunity to attack without mercy. The geniuses of the four great empires had been competing with each other for a long time, and had accumulated a lot of grudges. Under the current circumstances, no one would allow others to seize the opportunity to obtain the Saint Dao fruit. Therefore, they could only fight and delay each other. Dugu Bai, it's about time we put an end to this. A cold voice reached Yi Guchen's ears. Hua Wuxiu took out the luster dual swords with both hands, and his aura soared with determination. Before Yi Guchen came to the Sword Dynasty, Hua Wuxiu was one of the most famous geniuses in the Sword Dynasty. But Yi Guchen's appearance had shattered Hua Wuxiu's accumulated prestige time and time again. In the 5 Academies competition, Hua Wuxiu lost to Yi Guchen. In the trip to the ancient sword tomb, Hua Wuxiu was still defeated by Yi Guchen. It could be said that Yi Guchen was like Hua Wuxiu's natural nemesis. In this situation, Hua Wuxiu naturally could not let Yi Guchen have a chance to obtain the Saint Dao fruit, so he also decided to end things with Yi Guchen. It just so happens that I have the same idea. Yi Guchen's lips curled into a calm smile. He had indeed been entangled with Hua Wuxiu for too long. Their opposing positions and camps, coupled with the enmity along the way, between him and Hua Wuxiu, there was no other outcome except to fight to the death. Like Hua Wuxiu, Yi Guchen would not allow Hua Wuxiu to obtain the Saint Dao fruit. So between the two, only one could survive. Looking at Yi Guchen's calm smile, Hua Wuxiu's lips curled into a cold smile and said, Dugu Wu Bai, if you think that you can rest easy after defeating me in the 5 Academies competition, then you are too stupid. Hua Wuxiu mistakenly thought that the smile on Yi Guchen's face was because Yi Guchen had defeated him in the 5 Academies competition. But little did he know that Yi Guchen was smiling because he had more hidden cards than Hua Wuxiu. Come on, Hua Wuxiu, although we are mortal enemies, you do have some achievements in swordsmanship. Yi Guqin held the 9-dragon thunder prison, and suddenly drew his sword. Hua Wuxia was able to integrate chess and swordsmanship, which was enough to show that he was talented. Coupled with the sacred body of light and darkness, he was indeed a rare genius in swordsmanship. But unfortunately he was on the opposite side of Yi Guqin. On the other side, Shangguan Jingshan Yinju and the others were a little restless when they saw the battle between the two. They really wanted to attack Yi Guqin again. At this time, Ling Emoshu, Xuanlian, and the others blocked them and sneered. "What are you still thinking about? Your opponents are us." Xuanlian and the others blocked some hidden dangers for Yi Guqin. At present, all the geniuses had their own opponents. Even Princess Luoho, Emo Guangdao, and the others could not deal with Yi Guqin for the time being. For a time, Hua Wuxiu and Yi Guqin, the destined opponents, were not disturbed. "Come and fight." Hua Wuxiu was originally calm and elegant, but at this moment he was full of fighting spirit. Holding the light and shadow swords in both hands, he flashed towards Yi Guqin. He displayed the bright sword technique in his hands. Rampage, Yin Yang, Heaven's Essence, and Dragon Slaying. The 4 moves were used together. As the black and white sword chi moved, it was as if the void had turned into a chessboard. Hua Wuxiu loved to play chess since he was young. He integrated chess into swordsmanship. Now that he had mastered it, the power he displayed was even stronger than during the 5 Academies tournament. One could imagine that Hua Wuxiu was now using his full strength. Yi Guqin was not idle either. He displayed the 3 ultimate holy swords one after another. 3 sword lights spread out and were randomly combined. Star and Moon Reversal, Star Sun Flowing Fire, Universe Extinction, and other ultimate moves were displayed one after another. Boom! Boom! The sound of continuous collisions resounded in all directions. The shock waves even surprised the people from the other empires. Yi Guqin was still suppressing the aura of the divine dwelling stage, and did not spread out. He was waiting for an opportunity. "Well, Dugu Bai, the most important thing now is to fight for the Saint Dao fruit. I don't have the time to be entangled with you." Hua Wuxiu's body suddenly shook. He directly activated the sacred light and darkness body, transforming into the light form. His fluttering hair turned golden, and his whole person was like a god descending. Radiance Sword Domain. Hua Wuxiu once again brought out Komio Kendo's sword domain, the Radiant Sword Domain. In an instant, a dazzling light spread out from his body. Endless golden light soared into the sky. Tens of thousands of swords rushed towards Yi Guqin. It was obvious that Hua Wuxiu didn't want to delay, and wanted to get rid of Yi Guqin quickly. 3 espers in 1. Moon falling star sinking vast sunbreak. Yi Guqin used so close, yet worlds apart to pull his body towards Hua Wuxiu. At the same time, he displayed the 3 espers in 1 sword move. Terrifying sword light accompanied by the stars, moon, and sun pierced into Hua Wuxiu's radiant sword domain. "It's useless, Dugu Bai. Your power can't break my sword domain." Hua Wuxiu smiled calmly. The light form was originally based on power. Coupled with his divine dwelling stage cultivation, it wasn't something that Yi Guqin, who was only at the spirit bridge stage, could break through. "Oh, is that so?" Looking at the confident Hua Wuxiu, Yi Guqin sneered. He activated the divine dwelling in his body. In an instant, a powerful surge of vital qi spread out like a geyser. The power of Yi Guqin's sword moved several times. "Unfortunately, I'm also at the divine dwelling stage." Yi Guqin's words made the confident smile on Hua Wuxiu's face freeze. Not only him, but all the surrounding heaven prides were shocked when they heard these words. Chapter 1070. Yi Guqin was at the divine dwelling stage. This news shocked everyone. In particular, the heaven prides of the Sword Dynasty were filled with unprecedented horror. How is this possible? How could Dugu Bai break through to the divine dwelling stage so quickly? Shangguan Jingshan's face darkened, unwilling to believe it at all. Damn it, what kind of opportunity did he obtain? Yinju's heart trembled. Huh. Even Jin Kuei, who had always been as calm as a mountain, revealed a hint of surprise. Yi Guqin breaking through to the divine dwelling stage was something no one present had expected. It should be said that Yi Guchen was only at Tiandi Lingxiao in the 5 Academies tournament, but he was able to defeat Hua Wuxiu. And now, no one knew how strong Yi Guchen had become after breaking through to the divine dwelling stage. Brother Dugu really hid his strength well. Jian Jinghong and the others sighed in their hearts. Originally, the heaven prides of the unaffiliated cultivator camp did not have an advantage. But now Yi Guchen, who had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, had undoubtedly greatly increased the power of the unaffiliated cultivator camp. Rumble. After completely revealing the power of the divine dwelling stage, the power of Yi Guchen's triple ultimate sword move had also increased by several times. If he was still at the spirit bridge stage, Yi Guchen might not have been able to break through Hua Wuxiu's glorious sword domain. But now, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds. The glorious sword domain was directly torn in half by Yi Guchen's sword move. Even Hua Wuxiu could not avoid it in time. He could only stack his 2 swords in front of him and forcibly resist Yi Guchen's sword. Clang! Dazzling metal sparks burst out, accompanied by the sound of metal vibrating. Hua Wuxiu felt a terrifying force explode in front of him, causing him to retreat rapidly. His chest shook and a metallic taste filled his mouth. Because he had misjudged Yi Guchen's strength, Hua Wuxiu had suffered serious injuries. Yi Guchen's battle instincts were extremely powerful. He grasped Hua Wuxiu's opening and continued to attack. Hua Wuxiu could be said to have taken one wrong step after another. He was directly suppressed by Yi Guchen. The sky prides from the aristocratic family's camp were all shocked. Hua Wuxiu was completely suppressed by Yi Guchen. This was something that no one had expected. Myriad God tribulation, heaven and earth annihilation. At this moment, Yi Guchen was like a sword god who had descended to the mortal world. The vigorous sword qi turned into a pair of sword wings. Together with the destructive sword, it once again pierced towards Hua Wuxiu. Radiance Sword Realm, Holy Radiance Sword. Hua Wuxiu used his ultimate move. Within the Golden Sword Realm, endless light soared into the sky and turned into a giant golden sword that collided with Yi Guchen's sword move. A loud boom sounded, as if the entire sacred palace was trembling. Amidst the shockwaves from the collision, the two of them retreated at the same time. However, it was obvious that Hua Wuxiu retreated more. Damn it! Hua Wuxiu's expression turned serious. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Yi Guchen had not broken through to the next realm, so this sword move would definitely not be able to harm him. However, after breaking through, Yi Guchen's strength had increased exponentially. Even Hua Wuxiu felt a sense of seriousness rise from the bottom of his heart. Hua Wuxiu again. Compared to Hua Wuxiu, Yi Guchen, who had broken through to the next realm, felt a sense of satisfaction. Previously, he had needed to use the sky-devouring secret skill to deal with Hua Wuxiu. Now he did not seem to be such a big threat. Of course, Yi Guchen would not make the mistake of underestimating his opponent. He immediately activated the Ancient God tactic. The Ancient God light runes on the surface of his body surged as he activated his Ancient God form. Hua Wuxiu's light form was the embodiment of strength. Yi Guchen used his Ancient God form to deal with him. 10,000 Gods Tribulation, Fall of Life. Yi Guchen once again gathered the vital energy in his spiritual abode and turned it into a terrifying sword move. In an instant, it was as if the heavens and earth were mourning, and the scene of the fall of life appeared. Radiance Sword Realm, 10,000 Sword Salvation. Hua Wuxiu activated his sword realm. 10,000 light swords rose into the air, turned around, and rushed toward Yi Guchen. A sharp sword ray collided with the 10,000 swords of light, causing the sword qi in the void to explode, and explode in all directions with a loud rumble. Amidst the collision, Yi Guchen used so close, yet worlds apart, and his figure almost instantly appeared in front of Hua Wuxiu. He pushed out his left hand, and the power of the Ancient God surged. Ancient Divine Royal Seal. A golden seal appeared, bringing with it a terrifying power that could suppress the heavens. It was the Ancient God clan's ultimate technique, the Ancient Divine Royal Seal. With Yi Guchen's Divine Dwelling Stage cultivation, the power of the Ancient Divine Royal Seal was incomparably powerful. Hua Wuxiu felt the surrounding air being compressed, as if a 5-fingered mountain was pressing down on him. I, Hua Wuxiu, am the chess player. I will not fail. Hua Wuxiu's expression was cold. He activated the sacred light and darkness body again, transforming into a dark form. His golden hair had turned pure black, and his eyes, which were overflowing with light, had also turned pitch black. Sword of the Dark Emperor. Hua Wuxiu swung out the shadow sword, adding the power of the dark sword Dao to it. A pitch-black sword light collided with the ancient divine royal seal, causing a huge wave of energy to burst forth. Hua Wuxiu suffered from the force of the impact, and his figure was blasted back, coughing up blood again. His figure, however, left behind a series of afterimages as he dodged the attack. On the other side, Yi Guchen's body was also shaken, but he was much better off than Hua Wuxiu. Hua Wuxiu, you are not the chess player. You are just a pathetic chess piece. Yi Guchen's expression was indifferent. No, it's impossible. Dugu Wubai, even if you have broken through, don't think you can defeat me. Hua Wuxiu wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with one hand, and a pitch-black light spread out from his body, turning into a pitch-black sword domain. It was the sword domain of the dark sword Dao, the eternal night sword domain. The eternal night sword domain once again enveloped Yi Guchen. It's useless. Yi Guchen shook his head slightly. Even in the 5 Academies tournament, Hua Wuxiu's eternal night sword domain could only cause him some trouble. Not to mention now that Yi Guchen had broken through. The suppression of the eternal night sword domain had weakened again. Oh, Dugu Wubai, do you think I used all my strength in the 5 Academies tournament? Hua Wuxiu sneered. Oh so? Yi Guchen asked calmly. Aren't you curious about what kind of moves I created in the ancient sword tomb? Hua Wuxiu said confidently. I don't care what kind of swordsmanship you created. I only know that you will die today. Yi Guchen said coldly. Ha ha. Hua Wuxiu suddenly laughed, and his long black hair danced wildly. He had always been calm and indifferent, but at this moment, he was close to madness. His handsome face revealed a trace of coldness. I have said that I, Hua Wuxiu, am the chess player. You have been in my calculations from the beginning to the end. Now, I will let you see my real trump card. Accompanied by Hua Wuxiu's cold shout, an incomparably powerful aura erupted from his body. The radiant sword domain and the eternal night sword domain appeared at the same time. Could it be? Yi Guchen's expression suddenly froze. Chapter 1071. Hua Wuxiu's actions not only shocked Yi Guchen, but also shocked all the surrounding sky prides. What a powerful aura. What kind of move is Hua Wuxiu going to use? No wonder he's a famous sky pride of the Sword Dynasty. His strength is shocking. Hua Wuxiu's aura shocked everyone. At this moment, Hua Wuxiu's hair was a mess. Half of it had turned gold, while the other half had turned black. His entire body seemed to be bathed in light, while the other half was hidden in darkness. Hua Wuxiu had completely activated the power of the sacred light and darkness constitution. His aura surged in all directions, shocking everyone. As a 7th grade Sky Pride's innate ability, the sacred light and darkness constitution had finally revealed its true power and sharpness. Dugu Wubai, this trump card of mine is specially prepared for you. Hua Wuxiu held the sword of light in his left hand. The radiant sword realm shook the void, releasing endless light. With the sword of shadow in his right hand, the eternal night sword realm spread out like a dark and lonely universe. What is Hua Wuxiu doing? What kind of move does he have? The commotion caused by Hua Wuxiu was so great that some of the surrounding sky prides were secretly paying attention to it while fighting each other. As Hua Wuxiu's opponent, Yi Guchen's expression was even more serious. He sensed that Hua Wuxiu's move would probably bring him a surprise. I am light and I am darkness. Light and darkness combine. Heaven and earth are in chaos. Hua Wuxiu's cold voice spread throughout the entire sacred hall. Then, to the shock of many sky prides, the radiant sword realm and the eternal night sword realm actually slowly merged. How? How is this possible? Some sky prides even unconsciously stopped what they were doing, looking a little dazed. They had never seen or heard of a fusion of sword realms. Even Yi Guchen's eyes suddenly focused, and his heart was slightly stirred. He couldn't be more familiar with this kind of sword domain fusion technique. Duguwubai, this is my trump card. Great barrier of light and darkness. As Hua Wuxiu finished his sentence, the Radiant Sword Realm and the Eternal Night Sword Realm merged together and turned into a chaotic sword realm. This was Hua Wuxiu's ultimate trump card, the great boundary of light and darkness concealment. With the appearance of this chaotic boundary, the space in the entire sacred temple seemed to tremble violently. The terrifying shockwave shook the surroundings, causing the geniuses to back off subconsciously. So powerful. What kind of move is this? He actually fused 2 sword domains. This is simply unheard of. The surrounding sky prides all gasped, especially the prodigies of the Sword Dynasty. The Sword Dao Field was a sword cultivator's technique. Many of the geniuses of the Sword Dynasty were able to use the Sword Dao Field. However, they had never seen sword domain fusion before. I can't believe Hua Wuxiu still has such a trump card. Kinpo's face darkened. He began to worry about Yi Guqin. Kinpo and the others were originally overjoyed when Yi Guqin broke through to the divine dwelling stage. They believed that Yi Guqin would definitely be able to suppress Hua Wuxiu. But now, after Hua Wuxiu brought out the great boundary of light and darkness concealment, Kinpo wasn't so confident anymore. It wasn't just Kinpo. Jianxi, Jian Jinghong, and the others were also frowning. Master. Mu Xingzu's eyes were filled with worry. Duguwubai. Ling Maoyin bit her lip and began to worry about Yi Guqin. It could be said that the unaffiliated cultivator camp's heaven prides were all on high alert at this moment. After all, Hua Wuxiu's trump card was really shocking. On the other side, Shangguan Jingshan, Yinju, and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Guqin, who had broken through to the divine dwelling stage, made them feel as if a boulder was pressing down on their hearts. If Hua Wuxiu died in Yi Guqin's hands, it was obvious that Yinju and the others would be the ones to die. But now they didn't have such worries. Hua Wuxiu's move is too strong. I can't even muster up the strength to resist. It seems that Duguwubai will undoubtedly die this time. Yinju thought. It wasn't only Yinju and the others who thought so. After feeling the terror of Hua Wuxiu's move, many others also thought so. Jian Jinghong, it seems that another person from your unaffiliated cultivator camp is going to die. Jian Kuei said coldly. Oh, the outcome hasn't been decided yet. Who knows? Jian Jinghong also replied coldly. Princess Luo Hua Lirong had always been cold. Yi Guqin had killed the pink playboy in front of her, so she naturally didn't have a good impression of Yi Guqin. But Yi Guqin's strange move, which crushed the void inch by inch, made Princess Luo Hua extremely wary. She vaguely felt that Yi Guqin wouldn't be defeated so easily. The surrounding heaven prides all had different thoughts. At this moment, Yi Guqin had calmed down. No, I was wrong. Hua Wuxiu's move seems similar to the ultimate sword domain, but there are some differences, Yi Guqin thought. Hua Wuxiu could fuse the Radiant Sword domain and the Eternal Night Sword domain because he had the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution. Hua Wuxiu used the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution as a bridge to fuse the 2 sword domains into one. But if Hua Wuxiu didn't have the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution, he definitely wouldn't be able to fuse the 2 sword domains into the great boundary of light and darkness. Moreover, Hua Wuxiu could only fuse the 2 sword domains. If it were other sword domains, he wouldn't be able to do it. Yi Guqin's ultimate sword domain could fuse 2, 3, or even 4 sword domains. The 2 of them weren't on the same level at all. How could Hua Wuxiu's own move be qualified to be compared to the ultimate move of the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe? Of course, for ordinary people, being able to fuse the 2 sword domains was already a heaven-defying move. Even Yi Guqin had to admit that Hua Wuxiu's talent in the Sword Dao was indeed astonishing. What's the matter, Duguwubai? Are you finally afraid now? Hua Wuxiu sneered at Yi Guqin when he saw that Yi Guqin wasn't moving. He thought that Yi Guqin was intimidated. I'm indeed a little surprised. But I'm not afraid. Yi Guqin said truthfully. Haha. Duguwubai, I have to say that you're really good at pretending. Since that's the case, let me tear off your disguise. Hua Wuxiu shook his head and smiled. He still thought that Yi Guqin was pretending to be calm. He didn't hesitate any longer and activated the Sacred Light and Darkness Constitution to the extreme. The great boundary of light and darkness concealment pressed down on Yi Guqin in an unparalleled manner. Let's test the power of this boundary first. Yi Guqin thought to himself and used the universal extermination. Powerful sword qi gushed out and slashed at the great boundary of light and darkness. However, the next moment, to everyone's surprise, the powerful sword qi was like a clay ox entering the sea. It didn't cause a single ripple. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows slightly. The universal extermination was already considered a very powerful move, second only to the 3 ultimate techniques in one. However, it couldn't even shake the boundary. Haha, a trump card that can be easily broken is not called a trump card. Dugu Wu Bai surrender. Hua Wuxiao's aura shook the sky. The great boundary of light and darkness rumbled and shook as it suppressed Yi Guqin. The next moment, Yi Guqin's figure was directly suppressed by the great boundary of light and darkness. It's over. At this moment, everyone around thought at the same time. Yi Guqin was actually defeated by Hua Wuxiao's trump card in an instant. Chapter 1072. No one thought that Yi Guqin would be able to survive such an attack. The power of the great boundary of light and darkness was too terrifying. The power of the fusion of the 2 sword domains was too strong. Even Princess Luoho, Mo Guangdao, and the other top prodigies felt their scalps tingle. Princess Luoho thought that if she were in Yi Guqin's situation, she would have no other choice but to unseal the power of her Luoho life providence. After all, this powerful move was made by Hua Wuxiao's sacred light and darkness constitution combined with the power of the 2 sword domains. It was impossible for it not to be powerful. It's over. Seeing Yi Guqin's figure submerged in the boundary, Shangguan Jingshan, Yinju, and the others heaved a sigh of relief. They all smiled with relief. Master! Mu Xingzu cried out. Her aura burst forth, and an unparalleled soul power fluctuation spread out. She wanted to rush to Yi Guqin's side, but she was stopped by the prodigies of the aristocratic families. No, it can't be. He won't die. Ling Maoyin's face was pale at the moment. She refused to believe that Yi Guqin, who had created miracles, would die just like that. Just as all the prodigies were secretly paying attention. The smile on Hua Wuxiao's face slowly faded. The reason for that was because he could faintly sense a resisting pressure coming from the spirit formation. What's going on? Hua Wuxiao frowned. He was naturally extremely confident in this trump card of his. It was definitely a powerful weapon. Logically speaking, it should be more than enough to kill Yi Guqin. But now, Hua Wuxiao could feel the resistance within the enchantment. Clearly, it meant that Yi Guqin was not completely dead yet. Hua Wuxiao's expression also fell into the eyes of the others. He's not dead. Brother Dugu is not dead. Ling Emoshu's eyes flashed with excitement. Mu Xingzu, Ling Maoyin, and Suki Miyazaki also suddenly heaved a sigh of relief. The great boundary of light and darkness embryonic concealment rumbled as waves of blood-colored sword qi spread out. That's the Azura Sword Dao's sword domain. A prodigy was shocked. Boom. An 18-layer blood prison rose from the blood sea, resisting the suppression of the great barrier. In a sea of Azura blood, Yi Guqin's expression was cold, like the Azura in the sword. Yi Guqin was not dead. This scene made all the prodigies of the prodigies were shocked. He's not dead? The faces of Shangguan Jingshan, Yinju, and the others stiffened. Hua Wuxiao, you want to kill me? You're still not strong enough. A line of blood flowed from the corner of Yi Guqin's mouth. Overall, it was not a big problem. He also used this opportunity to measure the power of Hua Wuxiao's move. It was indeed very strong, but it was not a fatal threat to him. You're just making a last-ditch effort. Hua Wuxiao snorted and activated the power of his sacred light and darkness constitution to the extreme. Rumble. The great boundary of light and darkness prodigy was like a chaotic millstone that rolled out again. Even Yi Guqin's 18-level Azura blood sea showed signs of collapsing. A sword domain obviously could not compare to a boundary of light and darkness. As expected, he can't resist it. Seeing the Azura sword domain being defeated, the surrounding prodigies shook their heads. They did not think that Yi Guqin could win. Even if Yi Guqin could use another sword domain, he would definitely not be able to resist the power of the great boundary of light and darkness. Hua Wuxiu, you didn't use your full strength, but why do you think I used my full strength in the 5 Academies tournament? The next trump card is also prepared for you. Yi Guqin laughed heartily. The genuine qi in his divine dwellings surged out, and a terrifying sword essence began to spread. As the sword essence spread, the surrounding void seemed to be filled with countless thunder and lightning sparks. Is Dugu Wubai going to use his sword principle again? But it shouldn't be of any use, right? No, this sword principle doesn't seem to be the one that Dugu Wubai used before. Some prodigies' expressions changed immediately after sensing Yi Guqin's sword principle. Almost all the prodigies present knew that Yi Guqin had 3 different sword principles, and could be said to be an amazing talent. But now, Yi Guqin's sword principle was different from the sword principle he had used before. Could it be that Dugu Wubai has comprehended a new sword principle? Thinking of this, Shangguan Jingxin and Yinju looked at each other, and saw a trace of horror in each other's eyes. Thunder Sword Principle, Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Yi Guqin shouted coldly. A powerful sword light turned into a ball of lightning and soared into the sky. Countless thunderbolts spread out from the lightning, as if the surrounding void had turned into a thunder-forbidden domain. At this moment, Yi Guqin finally displayed the 4th sword principle that he had comprehended. The Thunder Sword Principle. That's the Thunder Sword Principle. Oh my god, when did Dugu Wubai comprehend the Thunder Sword Principle? With 4 Supreme Sword Daos, is he still human? Monster, he's definitely a monster. No wonder he's called a natural saint. As Yi Guqin displayed the Thunder Sword Principle, the surroundings seemed to be in an uproar. All the Sky Prides were stunned, especially some of the prodigies from the Sword Dynasty. Because they were sword cultivators, they knew how difficult it was to comprehend a sword principle. It was difficult for others to comprehend a sword principle. But now, Yi Guqin had displayed a total of 4 sword principles. Thunder Sword Principle. How could you possibly comprehend a 4th sword principle? Even Hua Wuxiu's expression changed. He was shocked and surprised. The Thunder Sword Principle was considered a superior sword principle even among the sword principles. Its attack power was extremely strong. Nothing is impossible for me, Dugu Wubai. Yi Guqin's vigorous vital energy in his spiritual abode was injected into the 9-dragon thunder prison. In an instant, it was accompanied by a series of dragon roars. The souls of the thunder dragons appeared one by one. In the end, a total of 6 souls appeared, filling the area with destructive lightning. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique, Extreme Lightning. Yi Guqin raised his sword. In the void, a Zhun hexagram with flashing lightning condensed. The tip of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword touched the Zhun hexagram. In an instant, the entire sword was filled with endless destructive lightning. Yi Guqin activated the power of the 9-colored dark thunder again, and added it to this move. Hua Wuxiu, who said that no one can break your enchantment. Yi Guqin's powerful move swept towards the great enchantment of light and darkness. The power of the Thunder Sword Principal Realm. The power of the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. The extreme lightning of the 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Technique. And the powerful 9-colored dark thunder. The 4 powers superimposed together. The power was like a heavenly punishment, sweeping across the surrounding area. As the sword swept out, the glaring lightning caused the entire sacred hall to be engulfed in endless light. The terrifying sound of thunder could be heard in the void. It was as if 100 stars had exploded at the same time. The power of this move made all the prodigies feel a chill down their spines. It was as if they were on the verge of death. Rumble. A strong shockwave swept across the entire sacred hall. If not for the suppression of the pyramid, the shockwave alone would have destroyed the entire sacred hall. All the prodigies dodged and opened their eyes with difficulty. What was the outcome of this clash of extreme moves? Chapter 1073. One of them was a renowned 7th-grade prodigy from the Sword Dynasty. He possessed the sacred light and darkness constitution, and had created the great light-dark embryonic concealment barrier, Hua Wuxiu. The other was a prodigy who had comprehended the four supreme sword Daos, and was a natural saint who had created miracles time and time again, Yi Guqin. Both of them were giants among men, and no prodigy dared to underestimate them. At this moment, Hua Wuxiu and Yi Guqin's ultimate moves collided, setting off earth-shattering shockwaves that caused the surroundings to tremble. Everyone wanted to know what the final outcome would be. As the light weakened, everyone saw Yi Guqin's powerful thunderous sword strike ruthlessly, piercing into the great light-dark embryonic concealment barrier. The entire chaotic barrier was filled with lightning, which swept across the entire area. Cracks began to spread across the barrier. Hua Wuxiu's barrier is about to be broken. Seeing this, some prodigies couldn't help but exclaim. Hua Wuxiu's self-created ultimate move was ultimately no match for Yi Guqin's four-layered attack. Damn it! Shangguan Jingshan, Yinju, and the other prodigies from the aristocratic families had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. If Hua Wuxiu died, it would be their turn next. No, impossible, absolutely impossible. I, Hua Wuxiu, am the chess player. I will not lose. Hua Wuxiu's hair was in a mess, and his usually calm and handsome face was slightly distorted at this moment. He didn't believe that he would lose. He didn't believe that Yi Guqin would be able to break his ultimate move. I, Hua Wuxiu, will not lose. Hua Wuxiu roared and slapped his chest with one hand. Then he spat out a large mouthful of essence blood, which landed on the great light-dark embryonic concealment barrier. The barrier, which was already full of cracks, immediately healed. Not only that, the great boundary of light and darkness was still expanding vaguely. Again. Hua Wuxiu's expression revealed a hint of madness. At this moment, he was ready to risk everything. His only obsession was to kill Yi Guqin with his own hands, no matter what the price was. Then, Hua Wuxiu once again forced out the essence blood from his heart, and at the same time completely squeezed out the power of the light and darkness sacred body. Under Hua Wuxiu's relentless support, the great boundary of light and darkness embryonic embodiment expanded at an extremely terrifying speed, becoming even more powerful. That Hua Wuxiu is crazy. Seeing Hua Wuxiu's actions, the surrounding geniuses immediately backed off. If they didn't retreat, they might even be implicated. On the other side, Yi Guqin's figure was finally forced back. His sword had originally almost broken the barrier, but in the end, Hua Wuxiu had risked his life to save him. Dugu Wu Bai, you are the first person to put me in such a difficult position. Therefore, your ending is to be killed by me with my own hands. Next, I will risk my life to kill you. Hua Wuxiu's skin cracked all over and blood spurted out. Obviously, at this point, he was somewhat unable to control the power of the great boundary of light and darkness. Therefore, he had to take advantage of the last opportunity to kill Yi Guqin. Endless light and darkness, harmonization of heaven and earth. Hua Wuxiu used the last of his strength to perform his ultimate move. The entire great boundary of light and darkness turned into a chaotic chessboard. On the chessboard, every black and white chess piece was a ball of sharp sword qi. Finally, on the chessboard, the chess pieces gathered together, as if to make light and darkness chaotic again. This was Hua Wuxiu's ultimate move, endless light and darkness, harmonization of heaven and earth. Kill. The chaotic chessboard completely suppressed Yi Guqin. Hua Wuxiu's ultimate move, even Jian Kuei, who had always been high and mighty, revealed a look of surprise. Obviously, the power of Hua Wuxiu's move had exceeded his expectations. Is he still not going to die this time? Shangguan Jingshan and the others stared at Yi Guqin. Rumble. Yi Guqin's expression was very calm as he felt the destructive chessboard coming down on him. It's time to test the power of that move, Yi Guqin muttered to himself. He controlled the Azura Sword Principal's sword territory, and slowly superimposed it with the Lightning Sword Principal's sword territory. The move Yi Guqin wanted to perform was one of his strongest trump cards, the ultimate sword territory. Previously, he had only superimposed the two sword territories slightly to scare off Princess Luo Ho and kill Pink Playboy in one move. At this moment, Yi Guqin performed the move again, but this time it was not the same as before. Instead, he had completely superimposed the power of the two sword domains together. Azura Sword Principal, Azura Blood C18 levels. Lightning Sword Principle, Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Yi Guqin raised both his hands as if he was controlling the power of the two sword territories. Finally, he completely fused them together. Ultimate Sword Territory, the fusion of the two sword territories. Boom. At the moment of the fusion, an incomparably powerful and terrifying pressure swept across the void. The surrounding skyprides who were slightly closer to Yi Guqin spat out blood and were sent flying. Princess Luo Ho revealed a look of shock under her mask. This move again. She had forgotten that when Yi Guqin had performed this move previously, she had felt an extreme sense of danger. And now, the same sense of danger had appeared again. The power of the two sword territories was like two millstones superimposed on each other, crushing the void inch by inch. The power that it exuded was terrifying. What kind of move is that? Dugu Wubai can also fuse the two sword territories. Yi Guqin's move made everyone turn pale with fright. Hua Wuxiu almost stopped breathing. He had gone through countless cultivation, deductions and painstaking efforts before he could fuse the two sword territories. As for Yi Guqin, he was able to merge the two sword realms. Moreover, it was the Azura Sword Principle and the Lightning Sword Principle, which had completely different attributes. Kaboom! The power of the ultimate sword territory collided with the chaos chessboard. An indescribably powerful fluctuation erupted, and the ripples swept across the void like a ferocious wolf. Under the powerful impact, Hua Wuxiu and Yi Guqin both spat out blood and were sent flying. Under everyone's gaze, the ultimate sword territory viciously tore the chaos chessboard apart. The moment the chaos chessboard was torn apart, Hua Wuxiu spat out another mouthful of blood. His aura had also become extremely weak. The sword territory fusion technique that he had created could not be compared to the ultimate sword territory of the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe. The top genius of the Hua family had finally been defeated by Yi Guqin. Defeated? Hua Wuxiu has been defeated. Shangguan Jingshan and the other geniuses from the Sky Mountain Sword Tribe looked pale as they stammered. They could imagine that after Hua Wuxiu, they would be next. No, how can this be? How can I be defeated? Hua Wuxiu's mouth was full of blood, and even his hair was stained with blood. He was on the verge of madness, and he could not believe it. Hua Wuxiu, it's over. Yi Guqin also spat out a mouthful of blood, but his situation was obviously much better than Hua Wuxiu's. His expression was cold, and there was no mercy at all. Between him and Hua Wuxiu, one of them was destined to die. Without hesitation, Yi Guqin held the 9-Dragon Thunder Prison and stabbed at Hua Wuxiu. Damn it. Are you still not going to attack? Hua Wuxiu's expression was cold, and his eyes were bloodshot as he roared. As soon as he finished speaking, a voice rang out. There was a piercing sound. It was the sound of the sword piercing through flesh. Yi Guqin turned around and was shocked. It's really you. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows coldly. Chapter 1074. Yi Guqin looked over. A blood-red blade pierced through Jian Shi's chest. Fresh blood dripped down from the tip of the sword. How could this be? Jian Shi was stunned. After a few breaths of time, the tearing sensation from her chest rushed to her brain. Jian Shi, Kenpo and the other sword sons of itinerant cultivators suddenly changed their expressions and let out an angry roar. How could I? Jian Shi spat out blood. She turned her head with difficulty and saw the familiar grimace mask. Little 13, why? Jian Shi's delicate body trembled. She wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. No matter how much he calculated, no matter how much he thought, she didn't expect that the most unlikely person would attack her. Sorry, I had to do this. Jian Shisan's voice was very cold, very deep, and very hoarse. All the prodigies present were stunned, especially the prodigies on the itinerant cultivator's side. Suanlian Ling Emoshu, Ling Mayin, Mushingzu Suki Miyazaki, and the others. Their expressions were frozen, and they were in disbelief. The strongest sword son of the itinerant cultivator's side was known to be an existence that could compete with Jian Kuei. At this moment, he actually attacked his own people? Jian Shisan, you deserve to die. Kenpo flew into a rage and completely lost his composure. This was what it meant to be too smart for one's own good. This was because Kempo figured that if Jian Shisan was a spy, he wouldn't be so stupid as to use his fatal 13 swords to kill Sword 10. But Jian Shisan just had to do so. On the contrary, Kempo and the others didn't open their mouths to question Jian Shisan, because they were worried that the other party was trying to sow discord. But who would have thought that Jian Shisan just had to be a spy? He used his signature fatal 13 swords to kill Sword 10 in an open and aboveboard manner. Kempo and the others didn't dare to suspect him too much. Jian Shi even defended Jian Shisan, thinking that he was framed by the prodigies on the aristocratic family's side. And now, when Hua Wuxia was defeated, Jian Shisan finally couldn't hide his identity as a spy. I just want to know why. Blood kept gushing out of Jian Shi's mouth. In her heart, she admired Jian Shisan. She also knew that Jian Shisan was a lonely person and never got close to other sword sons. But even so, she still trusted Jian. It was precisely because of this that she would work so hard to defend Sword 13, when Sword 10 died. And now, Sword 11 felt that his life was gradually slipping away. I'm sorry, I don't have a choice. Jian Shisan's sword hand was trembling slightly. How could he not know Jian Shi's admiration for him? But Jian Shisan didn't have a choice. Splat. Jian Shisan pulled out the bloodbath sword. Blood splattered everywhere. Jian Shi's figure fell like a butterfly with broken wings. Damn it, Jian Shisan. Do you know how much she likes you? Kenpo roared, his aura bursting forth. He hated Jian Shisan's betrayal. Jian Shisan was silent. Holding the bloodbath sword, he charged toward Yi Guqin. Haha Duga Wu Bai, I've said it before. I'm the chess player. You're all just chess pieces. How can a chess piece win against a chess player? Hua Wuxia laughed maniacally. Jian Shisan was one of the hopes of the itinerant cultivator camp. But now this hope had turned into desperation. Following Jian Shisan's betrayal, Jian Shi's death, the power of all the sword sons in the itinerant cultivator camp was severely weakened. No matter who wins or loses, I only know that you're going to die. Yi Guqin's expression was also very cold. He activated the power of the dual sword realm and charged toward the heavily injured Hua Wuxia. Jian Shisan, why aren't you saving me? Do you want her to die? Hua Wuxia shouted and retreated at the same time. Everyone had a survival instinct. Hua Wuxia was no exception. He also wanted to live. He didn't want to be killed by Yi Guqin. Hearing Hua Wuxia's words, Jian Shisan's body suddenly shook. He used his other hand to touch the ghost mask on his face. His eyes were filled with determination. Fatal 13 Swords, 4th Sword. A streak of blood-red sword chi, with an indomitable evil spirit, locked onto Yi Guqin's back. As the strongest sword son of the itinerant cultivator camp, Jian Shisan's strength was unquestionable. Even Yi Guqin felt an extreme sense of danger. He gritted his teeth and his expression was cold. Immovable king armor of the ancient god. Yi Guqin's body was overflowing with golden light. In the end, it condensed into a golden armor. Yi Guqin was going to take Jian Shisan's sword head-on. Damn it! Seeing Yi Guqin's actions, Hua Wuxia's expression changed. Whether Jian Shisan could hurt Yi Guqin or not, he would definitely die. Jiankui, save me. Hua Wuxia found it difficult to speak, but at this critical moment, he had no choice but to speak. Trash! Not far away, Jiankui's expression was cold. While fighting Jian Jinghong, he rushed toward the top of the pyramid. He had no intention of helping Hua Wuxia. No. Rumble. The two sword Dao domains were like millstones grinding against each other, crushing the void. It was not something that Hua Wuxia, who was severely injured, could withstand. Hua Wuxia's body crumbled inch by inch, turning into blood and dust. The pain of his body being crushed drowned out Hua Wuxia's senses. His face was distorted. Finally, he let out an angry roar. Duga Wu Bai, you will die. Not only you but everyone in the itinerant cultivator camp, including Yi Tianqing, will die. After finishing his last sentence, Hua Wuxia's entire body exploded into a rain of blood. Hua Wuxia, the famous 7th grade prodigy who ranked 3rd on the Sword Dynasty, had completely fallen. But his last sentence before his death made Yi Guqin frown. Did that mean that Yi Tianqing would also fall? However, Before Yi Guqin could think about it, a sharp pain came from his back. Although the immovable king armor of the ancient god had offset most of the power of Jian Shisan's move, but there was still a small amount of sword qi that pierced through Yi Guqin's back, causing him to cough up blood. Dead. Jian Shisan's expression was a little ugly. Hua Wuxia's death made him have a bad feeling. Would she be okay? Jian Shisan, although I don't know why you betrayed the itinerant cultivator camp, you will not succeed. Yi Guqin wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his expression cold. Jian Shisan slowly shook his head. Since it was already too late, there was no room for negotiation. Just as Jian Shisan was about to continue attacking Yi Guqin. However, Saber 9 had interfered. Brother Degu, go fight for the Saint Dao fruit. We will hold him back here. Kimpo shouted. Okay. Yi Guqin did not hesitate. He turned around and flashed away. Right now, the Saint Dao fruit was the most important thing. Once they obtained the Saint Dao fruit, they could immediately retreat. Yi Guqin immediately used the Gravity Sword Realm. The entire Gravity Sword Realm seemed to offset the suppression of the pyramid. Yi Guqin's speed also skyrocketed as he rushed toward the saint's corpse at the top of the pyramid. Chapter 1075. Wishful Thinking. Seeing Yi Guqin climbing the pyramid at full speed, Jian Kuei's voice was cold. The bronze pagoda in his hand shook, and he broke free from Jian Jinghong's restraint and followed closely behind. Don't even think about it. Jian Jinghong also followed in a flash. In addition, Princess Luo Ho, Mo Guangdao, Zhao Xiaodi, and the others also used their own methods and followed closely behind. The rest of the people were fighting as they approached the top of the pyramid. Although Kimpo's strength was inferior to Jian Shisan's, he could still delay them. In addition, Jian Wu, 7th Swordsman, Xuanlian, Ling Emoshu, and the others were also entangled with Jian Er, Jian San, and the other geniuses of the aristocratic families. We're almost there. Yi Guqin used the gravity sword domain to counteract the suppression of the pyramid. Therefore, he was the fastest to reach the top of the pyramid. Even Yi Guqin could vaguely feel the waves of suppressive aura coming from the saint corpses. Even if a heavenly tribulation saint had died, their corpses still had supreme suppressive aura. Yi Guqin, be careful. I keep feeling that there's something strange about this place. Su Qingyu's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Guqin's mind. Yes, indeed. Yi Guqin nodded secretly. With his keen divine soul perception, he could also feel that there was a strange soul power fluctuation in this temple. That fluctuation made Yi Guqin instinctively feel repulsed. That corpse? Yi Guqin's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, he saw that among the 7 saint corpses at the top of the pyramid, one of the corpses was dragging a compass-like object in its hand, which seemed to be engraved with array patterns. But what caught Yi Guqin's attention the most was the saint corpse that was dragging the compass-like object. It only had 4 fingers on its left hand, and it was missing its little finger. It was the same as what he saw on the murals in the temple. Not only that, it was the same as Jian Kuei's. Yi Guqin sensed something and turned to look at Jian Kuei, who was chasing after him. Through the mask, Yi Guqin seemed to be able to sense Jian Kuei's excitement. I absolutely can't let him get that compass, Yi Guqin thought to himself. He didn't know why, but he instinctively had this thought. He must not let Jian Kuei get that compass. Haha, I'm finally going to succeed. Jian Kuei couldn't contain his excitement. His long-term plan was finally going to succeed. As long as he obtained that compass, Jian Kuei would obtain unparalleled benefits. He would also become the strongest in a single leap, and might even lead the Sword Dynasty in the future. Therefore, Jian Kuei must obtain that compass. However, just as Yi Guqin was about to approach the corpse of the saint who was holding the compass in his hand, Yi Guqin suddenly stopped. However, a thunderous sword radiance pierced through the air and blocked his path. Dugu no defeat. Jian Kuei spat out each word in anger. Jian Kuei, didn't you boast that you would kill me? Yi Guqin clenched the 9-dragon thunder prison in his hand as he faced off against Jian Kuei. Compared to Hua Wuxia, Jian Kuei was clearly a more dangerous character. The main reason was that his identity was a mystery, and he seemed to have some connection with the Void Sky Sacred Dynasty. Since you're so eager to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Jiankui roared coldly, and the terrifying aura of the fifth heaven of the divine dwelling spread out, sweeping across the entire place like a storm. What a powerful aura! Is that the true strength of Jiankui from the Sword Dynasty? When Jiankui revealed the aura of the fifth heaven of the divine dwelling, all the heaven prides sucked in a breath of air, their eyes filled with incomparable horror. In the divine dwelling stage, every step was a different heaven. With each heaven, the density of one's chi would double. And of course, it would be more difficult to break through. Jiankui's strength of the fifth heaven of the divine dwelling stage was almost the strongest here. Even Princess Luo Ho and other top heaven prides would be at a disadvantage against Jiankui if they didn't use their trump cards. Fifth heaven of the divine dwelling stage? Even Yi Guchen's expression turned grave. Jiankui's strength was indeed a little beyond his expectations. If he was a little stronger, he would almost be on par with Di Haotian. The situation isn't good. The heaven prides of the unaffiliated cultivator camp suddenly changed their expressions. Even the heaven prides of the other dynasties had ugly expressions. The stronger Jiankui was, the lower their chances of snatching the Saint Dao fruit. 100 rivers converge. Jiankui raised the bronze pagoda, and 100 flying swords shot out from the pagoda. They gathered in the void and transformed into a magnificent torrent of swords that rushed toward Yi Guchen. Universe Annihilation. Yi Guchen also used this move and clashed with Jiankui. Boom. However, after the attack, Yi Guchen only felt that the fierce and vigorous torrent of swords seemed to be invincible. It directly blasted his body back, and he coughed out blood. Ancient God Form, Ancient God Immovable King Armor. Yi Guchen once again transformed into his Ancient God form, and at the same time, the Ancient God Immovable King Armor formed on the surface of his body to increase his strength and defense. It's useless. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. The swords that can't be used by me can only be broken. Jiankui's voice was cold. 100 flying swords once again streaked across the void and rushed toward Yi Guchen. It's too early to say this now. Yi Guchen's expression was cold. Although Jiankui gave him a lot of pressure, Yi Guchen was not a pushover either. He was the kind of person who would become stronger when faced with a strong opponent. Triple Ultimate Fusion, Moon Falling Star Sinking Great Sunbreak. Yi Guchen swung his sword, and 3 sword rays streaked across the void and merged into one. With one strike, the moon and stars exploded, and the great sun fell. The power of the strike was extremely powerful. Boom. Yi Guchen's sword move broke through the torrent of flying swords. Jiankui snorted coldly, and the bronze pagoda in his hand rose into the air, suspended in the void, and rotated on its own. 1,000 flying swords. As soon as Jiankui finished speaking, endless clanging sounds of metal rang out. Densely packed flying swords surged out of the bronze pagoda. 1,000 flying swords soared into the air, forming a huge sword ring that charged toward Yi Guchen. Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Yi Guchen activated his lightning sword Dao domain. Endless sword rays transformed into lightning and spread out, colliding fiercely with Jiankui's attack. 8 Extremities Reincarnation Sword Art, Extreme Lightning. Yi Guchen once again used his strongest move, and the trigram runes formed in the void. Yi Guchen's sword pierced through the runes, and the surging power of lightning burst out of the sword, sweeping toward Jiankui. This move is only SOSO. The sword chief's expression was incomparably calm. The bronze pagoda above his head vibrated, and flying swords surged out again. 10,000 streams returned to one. Jiankui stretched out his hand, using his fingers as a sword, and pointed directly at Yi Guchen. 10,000 flying swords surged and gathered in the void. Sword chi cut in all directions, causing the entire sacred hall to rumble and tremble. Rumble. The 10,000 flying swords rushed toward Yi Guchen in unison. The formation was shocking. Facing Jiankui's ultimate move, Yi Guchen no longer held back. Azura Blood Sea 18 levels. Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. The 2 sword Dao domains were once again merged by Yi Guchen. The power of the dual sword domains crushed the void, releasing endless destructive sword chi. This move caused even the sword chieftain's expression to become a little more serious. The 2 ultimate moves were about to collide. And at this critical moment, An arrogant and heroic laughter suddenly broke through the air. Haha, interesting. I didn't expect to see such a battle here. You didn't disappoint me. Accompanied by this arrogant remark, a purple-haired, vigorous figure stepped through the void and arrived. Chapter 1076. It was the figure that stepped through the air. His purple hair fluttered in the wind, and he wore a mysterious purple mask. He did not deliberately reveal his aura, but he gave off a sense of superiority, as if a heavenly sovereign had descended and was looking down on all the prodigies. It was the mysterious number 1 prodigy on the sword leaderboard, Z. Under the mask, Z was watching the battle between Jian Kuei and Yi Guqin with great interest. The two's ultimate moves collided in the air, and boundless sword chi rippled out. The prodigies around them were all sent flying. However, Z was not more interested in the stronger Jian Kuei, but Yi Guqin. That sword domain fusion technique. Z was surprised. He was born noble and had an extraordinary background. Naturally, his knowledge was not limited to the sword dynasty. Others might not know what Yi Guqin's sword domain fusion technique was. However, Z had seen it before. However, he was not too sure. This sword domain fusion technique was extremely precious. Even the faction he belonged to did not have it. It was even more impossible for ordinary people to obtain it. Why does Wubai have such a technique? Is it similar, or did it really originate from that place? Z wondered. He had come this time to obtain the fruit of the Sage Dao. However, Z had discovered something more important than the fruit of the Sage Dao. It was Yi Guqin's ultimate sword domain. Even Z, who had an extraordinary background, was slightly envious of such a technique. If I can obtain this person's sword domain fusion technique, perhaps I won't have to live under Di Haoyan's shadow, Z muttered. Just as Z arrived, Jian Kuei and Yi Guqin stopped fighting. The prodigies from the other dynasties also looked at Z in surprise. Is that the mysterious number 1 prodigy on the Sword Dynasty's sword leaderboard, purple? Who is he? His aura is so powerful. It's frightening. The surrounding prodigies were all on guard. Although Violet did not take the initiative to reveal his cultivation aura, the pressure he gave off was not any weaker than Jian Kuei. Damn it, someone is here to cause trouble again. Jian Kuei's eyes darkened under his mask. One Yi Guqin was enough to annoy him. Who would have thought that another variable would appear at this moment? Moreover, even with the sword leader's strength, he still felt an extreme threat from Z's body. Although Violet was ranked first on the sword ranking, her strength was still fundamentally different from Jian Jinghong, Hua Wuxia, and the others. Haha, the battle between geniuses is truly delightful. I also want the sage fruit. Z laughed boldly, incomparably domineering. There are many people who want this Saint Dao fruit. You are one more. Jian Kuei's tone was cold. Z's gaze suddenly turned to Yi Guqin. You are Wubai, the natural-born saint. I have heard of you for a long time. Today, I see that you are indeed somewhat capable. Yi Guqin frowned when he heard Z's words turn to him. He did not think that Z was a kind person. Moreover, Yi Guqin also felt that Z's gaze under the mask was scrutinizing him. It felt as if Z was staring at a treasure. I will cut to the chase. If you give me the sword domain fusion technique, I may help you deal with the enemy if I am in a good mood. I can also give you 1 or 2 sage fruit, Z said arrogantly. The meaning of his words was as if the sage fruit was already in his bag. Yi Guqin's face darkened when he heard Z's words. The ultimate sword domain was a technique of the Sky Mountain Sword tribe. It was also Yi Guqin's most important trump card. He naturally would not give it to anyone. As for the so-called help, Z's original words were that he might help if he was in a good mood. But it was also possible that he would not help if he was in a bad mood. This was equivalent to asking Yi Guqin to give him the ultimate sword domain without risking anything. How could there be such a good deal in the world? Before Yi Guqin could reply, a cold snort was heard. Although you are the first on the Sword Dynasty's sword ranking, you are not the only one who has the final say here. The person who spoke was Mo Guangdao, the 5th on the sword ranking of the Tyrant Saber Dynasty. Mo Guangdao had previously clashed with Yi Guqin because of the gold and silver twin sabers. Mo Guangdao was also an arrogant person, so he naturally could not hold himself back when Zi spoke so arrogantly. So you think that I am not qualified to say such words? Zi asked in an inexplicable tone. Of course, Mo Guangdao said coldly. Very well. Zi nodded slightly. In the next moment, Zi suddenly stretched out his palm. A terrifying wave of qi as deep as the sea erupted like a volcano and swept across the surroundings. 7th level of the divine dwelling realm. Purple's sudden attack caused the surrounding paragons to tremble in fear. How is this possible? Mo Guangdao's expression changed wildly. The disdain on his face instantly replaced by shock. Great sky-shattering handprint. Zi, who had erupted with the aura of the 7th level of the divine dwelling realm, grabbed at Mo Guangdao with one hand. True qi tumbled in the void, condensing into a huge handprint that seemed to be able to crush the void. Damn it! Heavenly Tiger Golden Shattering Blade. Mo Guangdao's eyes were blood-red. With a roar, he swept out a blade aura, trying his best to resist the great sky-shattering handprint. But he was still beaten to the point of vomiting blood inch by inch. He was seriously injured in an instant. Zi snorted coldly, stepped into the void, and took 9 steps in a row. 9-step Divine King Stomp. Zi's figure descended above Mo Guangdao's head in an instant. He stomped down fiercely, causing the void to tremble. Mo Guangdao, from his head to his body, exploded into a cloud of broken bones and blood. With one stomp, the 5th on the sword ranking of the Tyrant Saber dynasty was trampled to death. Everyone was aghast. Everyone was terrified. All the Heaven Prides were shocked. Their eyes were wide open, as if they had seen something impossible happen in front of their eyes. 7th level of the divine dwelling realm. Trampled Mo Guangdao to death with one stomp. All of this sent chills down the spines of all the Sky Prides present. Their gazes towards Purple were filled with unprecedented fear. I actually used 2 moves, Zi murmured, as if a little dissatisfied with himself. He had first used the great sky-shattering handprint, and then the 9-step Divine King Stomp, which indeed counted as 2 moves. However, his words once again made the faces of the Heaven Prides turn dull. Who exactly is this mysterious Heaven Pride? He killed a Heaven Pride with 2 moves, and he complained that he had used too many moves. Who is this person? He can't be a local Heaven Pride from the Sword Dynasty. His strength is almost at the level of Di Haotian. Yi Guqin's face was incomparably solemn. The pressure brought about by Zi reminded him of Di Haotian. Di Haotian was also at the 7th level of the divine dwelling realm in the infinite wasteland plains. It could be said that this mysterious genius Zi was almost on the same level as Di Haotian, a supreme genius, or even a supreme genius. Who are you? Some Heaven Prides asked in a trembling voice. It was really frightening to kill a top Heaven Pride in 2 moves. With him around, not many people were qualified to compete for the Saint Dao fruit. Didn't you question why I am qualified to monopolize the Saint Dao fruit? It's because I am. Zi raised his hand and took off the purple mask on his face inch by inch. As the mask was taken off, a handsome and valiant face with sword-like eyebrows appeared in front of everyone's eyes. That pair of strange purple eyes were like purple demonic stars. It was as if they could make people fall into a nightmare. Could you be? The faces of Jian Jinghong, Princess Luo Ho, and the other top Heaven Prides suddenly changed. Chapter 1077. Zi took off the mask on his face, revealing his true face. He was indeed handsome and valiant, with an extraordinary appearance. However, the most eye-catching thing about him was his pair of purple eyes, which matched his purple hair. Purple hair and purple eyes. Such obvious characteristics made Jian Jinghong and the others think of a person. If it was just purple hair, they wouldn't be sure. Although purple hair was rare, it wasn't non-existent. However, a pair of purple eyes was extremely rare. Similar to Di Haotian's silver eyes, it could be considered a symbol. Could you be the one from the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion? Jian Jinghong's expression was very serious. You have some foresight, Zi said indifferently. What you really are. On the other side, Princess Luoho and the other geniuses also looked serious. They were the geniuses of the top few dynasties in the 100 great empires. Although their foresight couldn't be said to be very high, it was definitely not limited to the dynasties. The geniuses of the 4 great empires had already roughly guessed Zi's identity. Jian Jinghong tilted his head slightly and secretly transmitted his voice to Yi Guqin. Brother Dugu, this is not good. I'm afraid this is really a tough one. Who is he? Yi Guqin was puzzled. He didn't know much about some things in the Nantian region, so he didn't know. This should be the legendary genius of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. Huang Qianqiu, Jian Jinghong said in a serious tone. Huang Qianqiu. Yi Guqin was slightly stunned, then suddenly thought of something. He seemed to have heard of this name before. His reputation in the Nantian region was not much lower than Di Haotian's. The Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion was an overlord-level force. Together with the Luofu Sword Pavilion, the Starry Sword Pavilion, and the Misty Sword Pavilion, they were known as the 4 Great Sword Pavilions. To a certain extent, Huang Qianqiu was equivalent to the Luofu Sword Pavilion's Jun Xiaoyao, the Starry Sword Pavilion's Gu Xiaoyang, and the Misty Sword Pavilion's Yi Songyue. However, the most important thing was that Huang Qianqiu was slightly stronger than the 3 of them. He was almost as strong as Di Haotian and the other supreme geniuses. Brother Dugu, have you heard of a saying in the Nantian region? Jian Jinghong's tone was serious. What saying? Yi Guqin asked. The legendary genius, 1 emperor for emperors. Jian Jinghong said. 1 emperor for sovereigns. A dark light flashed through Yi Guqin's eyes. He had indeed heard of this saying before. In the South Horizon region, the title of the most widely spread geniuses was the 10 Great Young Masters. But other than that, there was another explanation. 1 emperor and 4 sovereigns. 1 emperor and 4 sovereigns. In the South Horizon region, they represented 5 super geniuses of heaven whose strength surpassed their peers. He could be said to be the supreme overlord among the geniuses. One of the emperors represented Di Haotian. As for the 4 emperors, they were 4 peerless geniuses who were not much weaker than Di Haotian. People as strong as Gu Xiaoyang, Jun Xiaoyao, and the others were among the top 10 young masters, but they were unable to become one of the 4 sovereigns. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to become one of the 4 emperors. Brother Jinghong, do you mean? Yi Guqin's tone sank. That's right. Not only is Huang Qianqiu a top genius of the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion, but he's also one of the 4 sovereigns. Jian Jinghong's face turned ugly. No wonder. Yi Guqin sighed in his heart. From the moment Huang Qianqiu arrived, Yi Guqin felt that his strength was not much weaker than Di Haotian. Now it was indeed so. Huang Qianqiu, the number 1 person on the Sword Dynasty's sword leaderboard, is actually him? Oh my god, the legend of the 1 emperor and 4 sovereigns. I actually saw one of the 4 sovereigns. No wonder he boasted so boldly. No one here can defeat him. After Zi's identity was exposed, all the geniuses in the sacred palace looked at him with respect and fear. With Huang Qianqiu's strength, it was natural for him to kill Mo Guangdao in 2 moves. Seeing the respect and fear on the faces of the geniuses, Huang Qianqiu's face was indifferent. He was already used to it. However, at this moment, Huang Qianqiu noticed Yi Guqin's expression. Although Yi Guqin's eyes were serious, there was no trace of fear or cowardice. Interesting, no wonder you could pass the test of Mount Saint Crossing. Huang Qianqiu looked deeply at Yi Guqin. Even he had not completely passed Mount Saint Crossing. Huang Qianqiu had a feeling that he might be able to dig out many secrets from Yi Guqin. Dugu Bai, what do you think? Now I have the right to say such words. As long as you hand over the Sword Realm fusion technique, I'll be in a good mood and help you get rid of some ants. Huang Qianqiu placed one hand behind his back. His entire aura was noble and lofty. He had the right and ability to say such words. Hearing Huang Qianqiu's words, Shangguan Jingshan, Yinju, and the rest's expressions changed. If Yi Guqin agreed to Huang Qianqiu's request, then Huang Qianqiu could kill them with one slap. Even Princess Luoho's red lips were tightly pursed. It was not that she did not have the ability to fight against Huang Qianqiu. After all, she had the Luoho life chart. However, if it was possible, Princess Luo Ho would definitely not want to face such a powerful opponent like Huang Qianqiu. On the other hand, Jian Kuei's expression was solemn under his mask. Surprisingly, he was not too fearful of Huang Qianqiu. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably give in to Huang Qianqiu's words without hesitation. However, who was Yi Guqin? Even Di Haoyan was a tough opponent. If he was not even afraid of an emperor, why would he be afraid of one of the four princes? It was impossible for Yi Guqin to hand over the ultimate sword realm. I'm sorry, but that's impossible, Yi Guqin said coldly. As soon as he said that, the entire place fell silent. One by one, the sky prides widened their eyes and stared at Yi Guqin. Huang Qianqiu had an absolute background and strength to suppress everyone present. Who would dare to say no? However, Yi Guqin dared to. What a joke. He's courting death. Yin Zhu and the rest could not help but laugh as they heaved a sigh of relief. In their eyes, Yi Guqin's actions were undoubtedly courting death. What a pig-trotter. Does he really not want to live anymore? Although Zhao Xiaodi was scolding him verbally, there was a tinge of anxiety in her eyes. Although there had been friction between her and Yi Guqin when they first met, their relationship had eased as they had traveled together on the treasure hunt. At that moment, Zhao Xiaodi was also worried about Yi Guqin's situation. He brought this upon himself. On the other side, the valiant young Duke Zhongshan sneered. Yi Guqin had embarrassed him in front of Zhao Xiaodi. At that moment, he was more than willing to see Yi Guqin killed. As soon as Yi Guqin rejected Yi Guqin, most of the sky prides present thought that Yi Guqin was done for. Even if Yi Guqin was a natural saint and had killed Hua Wuxiu earlier. However, the outcome was undeniable. Huang Qianqiu was not a sky pride of a dynasty. He was a top-notch existence in the entire Nantian region. He stood at the peak with Di Haoyan and the rest. How could such a person allow his words to be disobeyed? Even Huang Qianqiu himself thought that he had heard wrongly. He tilted his head slightly and looked at Yi Guqin with his devilish purple eyes. You. Say that again? Since you heard it, why do I need to repeat myself? Yi Guqin's attitude was cold. Ha! Ha! To everyone's surprise, Huang Qianqiu actually laughed. Interesting. How long has it been since I, Huang Qianqiu, met someone who dared to disobey me? Duga Wu Bai, you've piqued my interest, so I've decided to capture you and plunder all your secrets. As soon as Huang Qianqiu finished speaking, the aura of the 7th level of the divine dwelling realm gushed out. He stretched out his hand and suppressed Yi Guqin. Chapter 1078. Huang Qianqiu was one of the 4 sovereigns of the One Emperor and 4 sovereigns. He was extraordinarily powerful, and had the backing of an overlord force like the Imperial Heaven Sword Pavilion. It could be said that he was favored by the heavens. Throughout his cultivation journey, he had defeated all the geniuses and no one dared to go against him. Now someone had chosen to go against his will. Even if that person was a natural sage, Huang Qianqiu would not allow it. He was the high and mighty sovereign, destined to look down on all living beings and command the world. At that moment, Huang Qianqiu did not hesitate and stretched out his hand. Vigorous true energy formed a huge palm print in the air. It was as if Mount Tai was about to collapse as it came crashing down on Yi Guqin. Huang Qianqiu, I Duga Wu Bai, am not a pushover that anyone can bully. Facing Huang Qianqiu's attack, Yi Guqin's true energy exploded, and vigorous lightning sword intent surged out. Streaks of lightning were formed in the air. Divine sword lightning manipulation art. Heavenly lightning attraction. The 9-dragon thunder prison in Yi Guqin's hand shot up into the sky. The terrifying sword intent turned into lightning and swept out in all directions. There were even 6 thunder dragon spirits that appeared from the sword. The divine sword lightning manipulation art was augmented by the lightning sword Dao and the power of the 9-dragon thunder prison. It collided with Huang Qianqiu's huge palm print. Boom. Along with an ear-piercing boom. Some of the geniuses were shocked to see that. The giant handprint actually annihilated the thunderbolt that Yi Guqin had unleashed. Moreover, its momentum did not diminish as it swept towards Yi Guqin. 1,000 lightning transformations. Yi Guqin used his sword technique again, and collided with the palm print. He retreated quickly, and his bones cracked as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Yi Guqin was injured by Huang Qianqiu's attack. Such strength! The surrounding sky prides of the 4 dynasties sucked in a breath of cold air. Yi Guqin's strength was beyond doubt. After all, he had killed Hua Wuxia directly, and now he could not even block one of Huang Qianqiu's attacks. You're indeed not weak. Yi Guqin's blood and qi churned in his chest. As a 7th-layer divine-dwelling expert, Huang Qianqiu's every move contained overwhelming power. He's only slightly injured? Huang Qianqiu was really surprised this time. He had originally thought that this move would severely injure Yi Guqin and cause him to lose his ability to fight. But to his surprise, Yi Guqin actually managed to block it and only suffered a certain degree of injury. Interesting, but that's all. Huang Qianqiu attacked again. True qi surged behind him, and a golden figure appeared. It looked like a Vajra, suppressing the void and breaking all spells. Vajra palm. Huang Qianqiu struck again. With a push of his palm, a giant golden palm print appeared in the air, crushing everything in its path as it charged towards Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's ancient god power surged, revealing his ancient god form. The surface of his body condensed the ancient god motionless king armor. Ancient god divine royal seal. Yi Guqin also blasted out a golden seal, which looked like a golden sacred mountain. The power of the ancient gods surged, and thousands of rays of light shot out. This inheritance. Huang Qianqiu's purple eyes were filled with surprise again. He did not immediately recognize Yi Guqin's ancient god inheritance, but he could sense that this inheritance was extraordinary. This made Huang Qianqiu even more determined to capture Yi Guqin alive. Boom! The Vajra palm and the ancient god divine royal seal collided. Vast waves of energy swept across the entire sacred palace. If not for the suppression of the pyramid, the entire sacred palace would have collapsed. In such an extreme collision, Yi Guqin's body was once again violently sent flying. However, to everyone's surprise, Yi Guqin made use of the recoil to charge towards the top of the pyramid. Almost at the same time, Jian Kuei and the other geniuses also rushed towards the top of the pyramid. In the eyes of the geniuses, Huang Qianqiu was indeed powerful, but the fruit of the sage was just too attractive. If these geniuses obtained it and handed it to the experts behind them, they might be able to create a heavenly tribulation sage. By then, even if they offended Huang Qianqiu, it would not be a big deal. After all, even an overlord-level force would not want to offend a heavenly tribulation sage. All of you are courting death. Huang Qianqiu's purple eyes flashed coldly as he watched the crowd rush towards the top of the pyramid. He formed the heaven-shattering palm with his left hand, and the Vajra palm with his right. As he pushed forward, the geniuses either spat out blood or exploded. He stepped on the bloody bones and dashed towards the top of the pyramid. The first to reach the top of the pyramid was none other than Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin was the first to reach the top with the help of the shockwave and imminent skyline. Without hesitation, he tore open the sage's corpse with his bare hands. The sage's body was said to be indestructible. But after all, they had been dead for so long, and their divine power had been exhausted. That was why Yi Guqin was able to break open their bodies. The fruit of the sage Dao was the essence that would automatically condense in the dantian of a sage's body after their death. Of course, there were also some sages who were unwilling to pass down their legacies, and would automatically disperse the laws in their body and return to heaven and earth. But such sages were the minority. The moment Yi Guqin tore open a sage's corpse, a vast power of laws surged out of the corpse's dantian. Yi Guqin's face lit up with joy. Although there were 7 sage corpses at the top of the pyramid, it did not mean that there would be 7 fruit of the sage Dao. There might not be. Yi Guqin was able to obtain a fruit of the sage Dao directly. It was quite rare. In an instant, Yi Guqin took out the fruit of the sage Dao. The fruit of the sage Dao was milky white and branded with endless mysterious runes of laws. But at this moment, Yi Guqin did not have time to observe it. He flipped his hand and put the fruit of the sage Dao into his origin ring. At the same time, Yi Guqin once again probed the head of the sage's corpse. Because Yi Guqin still needed to search for another item, the crystallized soul source. The crystallized soul source was the condensed soul power in a solid form. Generally speaking, only a sage's primordial spirit possessed such vast soul power that it could condense into a solid form. Even a celestial palace venerable, who had condensed a soul palace in his sea of consciousness, could only completely liquefy his soul power. Therefore, generally speaking, the crystallized soul source was most likely to remain in the body of a sage. As expected, Yi Guchen found a crystal the size of a pigeon's egg in the sage's head. It was the crystallized soul source. Yi Guchen plundered it as well. It seemed like he had searched for a long time, but in fact it only took a short while. Almost at the same time, Jian Kuei also landed in front of the other sage's corpse. It was the corpse that was missing a little finger on its left hand, and was holding a compass. Oh no! Yi Guchen dodged and swept his sword at Jian Kuei, trying to stop him from touching the corpse. At this moment, a blue-robed figure wearing a sword master mask also rushed to Jian Kuei and blocked in front of him. He was Jian Er, second only to Jian Kuei among the sword masters of the aristocratic families. He was also a very powerful sword master. Jian Kuei, I'll help you block him, Jian Er shouted coldly. Yi Guchen frowned. However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. As soon as Jian Er finished speaking, he turned around and stabbed at Jian Kuei. Chapter 1079. This scene was beyond the expectations of some of the prodigies from the Sword Dynasty. No one would have thought that Sword 2, who belonged to the aristocratic families, would attack Jian Kuei at this moment. Even Yi Guchen was stunned for a moment. Then he was enlightened. He finally understood what Kenpo's so-called trump card was. He did not expect Sword 2, who was second only to Jian Kuei among the aristocratic sword sons, to be a spy from the itinerant cultivator camp. However, at this moment Jian Kuei sneered. What a joke. Do you think I don't know? Ha! Sword 2's heart skipped a beat. Jian Kuei already knew that he was a spy. A gust of sword chi that carried an extremely murderous intent attacked him from the side. The person who attacked was Jian Shisan. Sword 2 hurriedly dodged to the side, but his waist was still grazed by Jian Shisan's bloodbath sword, and blood splattered everywhere. You already knew? Why? Sword 2's face paled slightly under the mask. He covered his waist with one hand and blocked Jian Shisan's attack with the other. You're just a bunch of trash. In my eyes, there's no difference at all. Jian Kuei snorted coldly. Whether it was the aristocratic families or the itinerant cultivator camp, in Jian Kuei's eyes, they were all trash. Therefore, the sword chief didn't care about the so-called spies and spies at all. Even if all the sword sons died, Jian Kuei would not care. He only cared about the success of his plan. After Jian Shisan blocked Sword 2, Jian Kuei grabbed the compass in the saint's corpse without any hindrance. Even Yi Guchen could not stop him in time. Oh no! Yi Guchen's heart sank slightly. He had a feeling that Jian Kuei, who had obtained the compass, would definitely be more difficult to deal with than Huang Qianxiu. This was because Jian Kuei was really strange. At the same time, Jian Kuei got the compass. Huang Qianxiu also swept away a group of obstacles and broke open a saint's corpse, obtaining a Saint Dao fruit. However, this did not satisfy Huang Qianxiu. All of you have angered me. Other than Dugawu Bai, everyone else must die. Huang Qianxiu's tone was cold. It was as if the wrath of an emperor could cause blood to flow for 1,000 miles. As for not letting Yi Guchen die, it was naturally not Huang Qianxiu's kindness. Instead, he wanted to obtain Yi Guchen's ultimate sword domain, and the ancient god's legacy. Right at this moment, an aged voice suddenly sounded. Hee hee little doll, you're so young but your tone is quite arrogant. The old voice reverberated throughout the entire sacred hall, sounding exceptionally eerie. Who is it? Huang Qianxiu raised his brows. The remaining sky prides of the other 4 dynasties also changed their expressions. Could it be that an elder from one of the dynasties had entered? Logically speaking, the elders of the 4 dynasties were all outside blocking the monsters from the 1,000-demon nest. It was impossible for them to enter the sacred hall's treasure. Only Yi Guchen's gaze landed on Jian Kuei immediately. If there was no surprise, that old voice came from the mouth of the sword chieftain. At this moment, Jiankui was sitting cross-legged in front of the saint's corpse. He cut his palm, and fresh blood dripped onto the compass. Streaks of blood-red runes appeared on the compass like earthworms. What the hell is going on? Even Yi Guqin found it inconceivable. It's you. Soon, Huang Qianqiu and the other sky prides also realized that the voice came from Jiankui. Hee, I never thought that I would have the chance to see the light of day again. Jiankui continued to speak in his old voice. Jiankui, what is going on? Not to mention the others, even the sword sons from the aristocratic families were shocked. Obviously, they did not know what was going on with Jiankui's strange behavior. I'll kill you first, you pretentious prick. Huang Qianqiu raised his brows and used the heaven-shattering palm to crush Jiankui. He decided to get rid of Jiankui first. However, to everyone's surprise, the compass in Jiankui's hand vibrated, and a protective shield appeared around him, blocking Huang Qianqiu's attack. Huang Qianqiu's eyes narrowed, and he used the Vajra palm again. However, the result was the same. He could not break through the defense of the protective shield. Hee, it's useless. Jiankui continued to speak in his strange old voice. At this moment, Su Qingyu's surprised voice sounded in Yi Guqin's mind. Could this be? Senior Su, do you know what's going on? Yi Guqin asked in his mind. I'm not too sure. Do you remember what I told you before? This person's soul seems to be strange and eerie, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guqin nodded. When he first met Jiankui, Su Qingyu had warned him that this person's soul was strange. Yi Guqin had also noticed it then. This reminds me of an ancient and evil technique called Primordial Spirit Host, Su Qingyu said. Primordial Spirit Host? Yi Guqin was confused. The so-called Primordial Spirit Host is a technique that only people above the saint level can use to preserve their primordial spirit using a special method. Then they can separate a strand of their primordial spirit to find a parasite that is compatible with their soul attribute. Then, they can let the parasite return to their original body and use their primordial spirit to possess it. However, this method is too cruel and eerie. Almost no saint would use it. Moreover, there's only a 1 in a billion chance of finding a parasite that is compatible with their soul attribute in the whole world. The chance is too small. Most importantly, I'm very curious about how this person's primordial spirit survived, Su Qingyu said. The ruined Sky Sacred Dynasty had existed for a very long time. Even a saint's primordial spirit couldn't survive for so long. The longevity ancient tree could only provide life essence for the physical body, but it couldn't nourish the primordial spirit. This was also what Su Qingyu was confused about. I see. After hearing Su Qingyu's explanation, Yi Guqin was suddenly enlightened. He understood why Jiankui's soul was strange. His soul had been invaded by a strand of a saint's primordial spirit and merged with it. Jiankui's body was exactly the same as the saint of the ruined Sky Holy Dynasty that he had seen on the mural. This meant that Jiankui's soul attribute was very compatible with that ancient saint. Is the remaining part of the saint's primordial spirit in the compass? Yi Guqin looked at the compass in Jiankui's hand. However, it was useless to think too much at this moment. Jiankui had taken the initiative. If even Huang Qianqiu couldn't break the shield, the others naturally couldn't either. Moreover, the barrier had already enveloped the remaining saint corpses. Princess Luoho, Zhao Xiaodi, and the others looked solemn. They didn't even have the right to get close to the saint corpses, let alone fight for them. There were only 2 people who had obtained the Saint Dao fruit. Yi Guqin and Huang Qianqiu each had a Saint Dao fruit. It's time to end this farce. I'll lead the tide and unify the Sword Dynasty. Jiankui slowly raised the compass in his hand, and a terrifying soul fluctuation was released. Vaguely, a black distortion appeared and disappeared in the void. That's, Su Qingyu said in surprise in Yi Guqin's mind. Chapter 1080. To be able to make Su Qingyu, a heavenly tribulation saint, so surprised, it was obvious how surprised he was by the scene before him. Senior Su, what's going on? Yi Guqin also felt it. The entire sacred hall was covered by a chilling energy. It's too strange. The saint's primordial spirit seems to have been contaminated, and is emitting an ominous aura. Su Qingyu's tone was very solemn. For a saint like him to say such words, it was definitely not a small matter. Jian Kuei held the compass in his hand, and runes turned into a rain of light that spread out. Vaguely, the entire sacred palace began to tremble violently. Then, the tremor spread until the entire sacred palace seemed to be rumbling and trembling. It was as if a giant was holding it and shaking it violently. What's going on? Damn it, I haven't gotten any opportunities yet. At that moment, geniuses all around the sacred palace cried out in horror. The geniuses in the sacred palace were even more alarmed and frightened. An array, it's an array. One of the geniuses lowered his head slightly and saw the array runes spreading on the ground. The formation was huge, almost covering the entire sacred dynasty's hidden treasure. The compass was also the hub that activated and controlled the entire array. The Great Sky Ruins Array is about to be activated. Your life and death will be in my hands. At that moment, Jian Kuei's body had been completely taken over by the strange ancient saint's primordial spirit. His aged voice made all the geniuses present feel a chill in their hearts. The Great Sky Ruins Array. It was obvious that it was an array left behind by the ruined Sky Sacred Dynasty to protect the sacred palace. No one would believe that such an array was not powerful. Let's go. Without any hesitation, the geniuses of the four great empires were in an uproar as they ran for their lives. The sword chieftain didn't stop them. In his eyes, these people were nothing more than ants. When the Great Sky Ruins Array was completely activated, the powerful existence suppressed under the pyramid would be released. By then, Jian Kuei would merge with that ancient, powerful existence. His strength would reach an unprecedented level. It would be a piece of cake for him to lead a dynasty. At that moment, even Huang Qianqiu was frowning. He was one of the four emperors, and he didn't fear anyone in his generation. However, this Jian Kuei was clearly beyond the scope of his peers. He was an ancient existence of the ruined Sky Sacred Dynasty. In addition, the great array of the Sky Market was about to be activated. Even Huang Qianqiu could not compete with him. Huang Qianqiu was not stupid. He knew that no matter how talented he was only among the younger generation. He could not compete with the primordial spirits of ancient saints. Therefore, Huang Qianqiu also had the intention to retreat. However, before leaving, Huang Qianqiu still had to suppress Yi Guqin and bring him away. After all, Yi Guqin's techniques made him envious. If he could get it, he might be able to compete with Di Haotian. Dugawu Bai, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over your sword and body tempering techniques, Huang Qianqiu said coldly. Yi Guqin did not even reply. He was also considering whether to retreat. However, Yi Guqin felt that only one Saint Dao fruit was too little. Looks like you're asking for trouble. Huang Qianqiu did not say anything else and attacked. It was still the giant palm print and the giant palm print. He ranked first on the sword leaderboard, and was also the pride of the Emperor Dragon Sword Pavilion. However, he did not use his sword. It represented Huang Qianqiu's arrogance. In his opinion, no one here was worthy of him using his sword. Even Yi Guqin, who was a natural saint, was the same. Huang Qianqiu. Yi Guqin's eyes were extremely cold. He did not provoke Huang Qianqiu. However, Huang Qianqiu was blinded by greed, and wanted to take his ultimate sword domain. Now he even wanted the ancient god's inheritance. How could Yi Guqin compromise? Baji Reincarnation Sword Technique, Mountain's Peak. Yi Guqin's sword slashed out. A gen hexagram as heavy as a mountain appeared in the air. The gen hexagram represented the weight of a mountain. It could suppress all things. The sword broke through the gen hexagram and turned into an extremely heavy sword. The surrounding air seemed to become as heavy as mercury. The powerful sword force collided with Huang Qianqiu's giant palm print. Terrifying shockwaves hit Yi Guqin's body again, causing him to cough up blood. The pressure that Huang Qianqiu gave him was the same as the pressure that Di Haotian gave him. However, compared to when he faced Di Haotian, Yi Guqin was in a much better state. At least he was not completely defenseless. Without hesitation, Yi Guqin immediately used the sky-devouring secret technique. The difference between his divine dwelling stage cultivation and Huang Qianqiu's 7th level of the divine dwelling stage was too great. Boom! The true qi in Yi Guchen's body erupted like a volcano. His aura skyrocketed by 3 minor levels, reaching the 3rd heavenly layer of the divine dwelling stage. Feeling the powerful energy in his body, Yi Guchen's eyes flashed coldly. Do you want to try again? Yi Guchen's sword vibrated and swept out. Interesting. I'm getting more and more curious about you. Huang Qianqiu's purple eyes lit up. The more techniques Yi Guchen displayed, the more Huang Qianqiu wanted to suppress him. The more Huang Qianqiu wanted to suppress Yi Guchen, the more he wanted to plunder his secret techniques. Baji Reincarnation Sword Art, Extreme Fire. Yi Guchen activated his strongest technique again. The pitch-black Nirvana demon flame rose from the sword. Yi Guchen had already mastered the 4th form of the Baji Reincarnation Sword Art. The Extreme Thunder, Extreme Fire, Extreme Mountain, and Extreme Wind. The Extreme Fire was even more powerful with the Nirvana demon flame's power. Heaven and Earth Unique Fire, and it's an upper-grade Emperor Sword Art. Duguwu Bai, you're a natural saint. You've really surprised me. Even Huang Qianqiu, who had seen much of the world, was shocked when he saw Yi Guchen's technique. He estimated that Yi Guchen's techniques and trump cards were more than the heirs of the overlord forces. However, it was still not enough to shake Huang Qianqiu. World-shaking Emperor Fist. Huang Qianqiu clenched his fist and punched out. He had finally used another ultimate technique, besides the 2 great hand seals. As he punched out, endless purple-gold divine light shone. It was as if it could shake the void. Without a doubt, the power of the punch was enough to shatter 1,000 zhang tall mountain. Rumble. Huang Qianqiu's world-shaking Emperor Fist collided with Yi Guchen's Baji Reincarnation Sword Art. Boundless energy waves burst forth. Some of the surrounding sky prides were blown away. Jiankui watched from the sidelines. He was fully focused on activating the Sky Ruin's Great Array and couldn't make a move. Cough. Amidst the violent collision, the sound of blood coughing could be heard. Yi Guchen retreated again. Although he had condensed the immovable king armor of the ancient god on his body, his chest had been shattered by the punch, and cracks had appeared. Huang Qianqiu's strength was definitely not inferior to Di Haoyan's at the Tianhuang Plains. I'll destroy you with one move. Huang Qianqiu raised his hand. Boundless true qi turned into sword qi and swept in all directions. At the same time, a golden sword-shaped insignia vaguely appeared on the back of his hand. Boundless saintly sword. Huang Qianqiu was like an emperor in a rage. Chapter 1081. Huang Qianqiu was serious. The power of this move was incomparably strong, causing one's heart to tremble. However, Yi Guchen was not just shocked by the power of this move. This wave. It's the sword sect's ultimate skill. Yi Guchen's expression changed slightly. The move that Huang Qianqiu was using, the Boundless Divination Sword, was definitely the sword sect's ultimate skill. At the same time, the elite insignia appeared on the back of Huang Qianqiu's hand. Unsurprisingly, Huang Qianqiu was also a 9th-generation sword sect echelon cultivator. And he was an elite. Jian Jinghong also sensed it. He was also a 9th-generation sword sect echelon cultivator. Yi Guchen knew the power of the sword sect's ultimate skill best, because he had 2 sword sect's ultimate skills. With Huang Qianqiu's strength at the 7th level of the divine dwelling realm, coupled with the sword sect's ultimate skill, the power was unimaginable. Yi Guchen did not dare to underestimate it. After using the sky-devouring secret art, the power of the 3rd level of the divine dwelling realm gushed out. He slashed out with his sword, and it carried with it a terrifying sword intent that seemed capable of annihilating all life and causing all things to fall. It was the second move of the 10,000 God Tribulation, Life Fall. Kaboom! When the 2 ultimate skills collided, it was as if there were billions of thunderbolts exploding in the void. The shockwave was extremely shocking, and a vast wave of air rippled out in all directions. Spurt! Yi Guchen spat out another mouthful of blood. His chest shook violently, and his internal organs trembled slightly. If it was an ordinary person, their body would have exploded under Huang Qianqiu's move. However, Yi Guchen took it head-on. This sword move. Huang Qianqiu was really surprised this time. He had thought that the superior emperor-level sword art was Yi Guqin's strongest sword move. But now, the power of the 10,000 god tribulation shocked Huang Qianqiu. The reason was simple. Huang Qianqiu had been pushed back. To put it bluntly, there were very few people among the younger generation in the Nantian region who could push Huang Qianqiu back. Unless it was the one emperor and 4 sovereigns. Even some of the 10 great young masters couldn't force Huang Qianqiu to take a step back. Duguwu Bai, you have one more reason for me to capture you alive. Huang Qianqiu smiled faintly. He made another move. He formed a seal with his hand and struck it directly into the void. Suddenly, an endless amount of sword light shot into the sky, forming a bronze giant statue in the void, holding a bronze giant sword in its hand. 3 Kings Sword Seal, Bronze Sword Seal. Huang Qianqiu's palm pressed down. At the same time, the bronze colossus waved its giant sword and slashed down at Yi Guqin. A single slash of the sword seemed capable of splitting mountains and severing rivers for thousands of miles. 10,000 deities tribulation, demonic Buddha tears. Yi Guqin also unleashed his strongest move. The third move of the 10,000 deities tribulation. 2 phantoms of Buddha and demon appeared. Tears dripped down and merged with the 9-dragon thunder prison sword. That sword was so powerful that it made Buddha and demon cry. It pierced through the void and clashed with Huang Qianqiu's powerful move. Rumble. Thunder rumbled on the ground, and a violent explosion spread out. Some of the sky prides in the surroundings quickly retreated. Many sky prides had already fled, but there were also many elite sky prides who stayed at the edge to observe, looking for an opportunity to strike. At that moment, they saw that Yi Guqin was able to withstand Huang Qianqiu's move, and they were all shocked beyond words. Puffed! In the violent collision, Yi Guqin's body slammed onto the ground, and his body shook violently. The 10,000 deities tribulation was a supreme move. If they were at the same cultivation level, Yi Guqin was absolutely confident that he could use this move to severely injure Huang Qianqiu. Unfortunately, the difference in cultivation level between the two of them was too great. Even the heaven-devouring secret skill couldn't make up for it completely. On the other side, Huang Qianqiu looked a little dazed. He slowly raised his hand, and streams of purple blood dripped from his fingers. Every drop of purple blood had a fragrance and contained a divine glow, just like the blood of a god. He had a head of purple hair, a pair of purple eyes, and a body of purple blood. This was the legendary Huang Qianqiu, one of the 4 sovereigns. His bloodline was special, and it was the legendary desolate sky body. The blood of the desolate sky body was purple and looked extraordinary. You made me bleed? Huang Qianqiu was in disbelief, and had yet to recover from his shock. Among the younger generation in the South Horizon region, how many people could make him bleed? Huang Qianqiu is bleeding. To be able to injure Huang Qianqiu, this Duguwu Bai is indeed worthy of being called a natural saint. Seeing this, the sky prides of the 4 great dynasties narrowed their eyes, and their evaluation of Yi Guqin rose by another level. However, those from the Sword Dynasty rogue cultivators camp, such as Saber 9, Jian Jinghong, and the others, were still worried. It was obviously not a good thing to anger Huang Qianqiu. Duguwu Bai, good, very good. Huang Qianqiu smiled. However, that smile was a little cold. Silver Sword Seal. Golden Sword Seal. Huang Qianqiu formed a sword seal with both hands. A huge silver statue and a huge golden statue appeared in the sky at the same time. The 2 statues held huge swords in their hands, and they swept towards Yi Guqin in a cross. Previously, the huge bronze statue had already injured Yi Guqin. Now that the 2 even stronger statues attacked at the same time, the power was unimaginable. Yi Guqin did not hold back either, and he immediately used the 18 levels of the Azura Blood Sea and Heaven's Punishment Thunder Prison. Then, the 2 extremely powerful sword realms overlapped in the sky. Instantly, a crushing force burst out like a millstone. The sky rumbled and heaven and earth shook, creating endless waves. The 2 of them were in a stalemate in the sky. The ultimate sword realm was powerful. However, it was still an incomplete fusion of the 2 sword realms, and its power was far from the maximum. Coupled with the difference in cultivation level, The ultimate sword realm was unable to crush the two statues immediately. At that moment, Huang Qianqiu stepped into the sky and used the 9 steps of the Divine King Stomp. The 9 steps of the Divine King Stomp was not only a Divine King Stomp, but it was also an extremely powerful move. Previously, Huang Qianqiu had used this move to crush Mo Guangdao's body. At that moment, Huang Qianqiu stepped into the sky. Every step he took was like the beating of a war drum, causing ripples to appear in the sky. In an instant, Huang Qianqiu had taken 6 steps, and the powerful shock waves forced Yi Guqin to retreat. Moreover, he had a strong physical body. If it were any other sky prides, their internal organs would have been shattered by the shock waves. Finally, Huang Qianqiu took his 9th step, and his foot crushed down on Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows, and the 9-dragon thunder prison blocked the move. However, at that moment, a cold light flashed across Huang Qianqiu's eyes. He flipped his wrist. A domineering huge sword appeared in his hand. The huge sword only had one side, and it was like a machete. The huge sword was filled with a powerful force of desolation and destruction. The shockwaves were definitely not something that could be emitted by a quasi-heavenly tribulation weapon. Dugawu Bai, it's your honor to make me use the desolate god slash. Huang Qianqiu's tone was cold, like the god of death passing judgment. With the desolate god slash in his hand, he slashed at Yi Guqin. Chapter 1082. Tribulation weapons were weapons that had been baptized by lightning tribulations. Their power was vastly different from ordinary weapons. Even if they were quasi-tribulation weapons, their power was far from a true tribulation weapon. Huang Qianqiu was the pride of the Imperial Heavensword Pavilion, and one of the 4 sovereigns. It was reasonable for him to have a tribulation weapon. At that moment, Huang Qianqiu used the desolate god slash and a destructive force was emitted. The surrounding sky prides of the 4 dynasties narrowed their eyes when they saw that Huang Qianqiu had already displayed his overwhelming power. With the addition of the desolate god slash, to what extent would his combat power increase? Desolate god 7 slashes sky-breaking slash. Huang Qianqiu's voice was cold as he waved the desolate god slash in his hand. The sword slashed down as if it was going to split the heavens. Yi Guqin had just blocked Huang Qianqiu's 9-step Divine King Stomp, and could not dodge it in time. He could only forcefully channel the true qi in his spiritual abode into the 9-dragon lightning prison. He used the 9-dragon lightning prison to block Huang Qianqiu's fatal attack once again. Clang! The desolate god slash and the 9-dragon lightning prison collided, and a piercing sound of metal clashing rang out. It was like the clanging of weapons in the heaven world. Endless waves of sword qi swept out in all directions. The terrifying shockwaves from the collision made the top sky prides of the 4 dynasties twitch their eyes. Yi Guqin's body flew out like a cannonball from the collision and crashed heavily onto the ground. His aura instantly plummeted. Is Dugawu Bai dead? Seeing Yi Guqin fall to the ground, some of the sky prides present could not help but pay attention. Mu Xingzu Ling Maoyin, and the rest were as pale as paper and their hearts were trembling. Kempo Jian Jinghong, and the rest were also frowning. They were being held back by the sword sons and sky prides of the aristocratic families, and could not help Yi Guqin. On the other side, Huang Qianqiu stood in the air with the desolate god slash in his hand. He looked like a god of war, handsome and dignified. In his opinion, Yi Guqin's ability was enough to force him to use the desolate god slash. On top of that, the gap between their realms was so huge. Therefore, even though he had defeated Yi Guqin, Huang Qianqiu was not happy at all. Wasn't this supposed to be the result? Cough. The sound of coughing blood came from the ruins. Dugawu Bai is still alive? Some of the sky prides were surprised. Princess Luoho, Inju, Shengguan Jingshan, and the others were all very surprised. As the dust settled, Yi Guqin slowly stood up. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Not only was Huang Qianqiu's slaughter of the desolate god extremely powerful, but it also contained an aura of desolation and destruction, causing Yi Guqin to be severely injured. If not for the fact that Yi Guqin possessed the heart of the ancient god and had a strong vitality, he would have died. Most likely at this moment, He was already at the end of his rope. However, this was not the most important thing. More importantly, the spiritual abode in Yi Guchen's dantian had shattered. Why do I feel that Dugawubai's aura has dropped by a lot? Yeah, he doesn't even have the aura of the divine dwelling stage. Evidently, the other sky prides had also noticed Yi Guchen's abnormality. At this moment, Huang Qianqiu, who was hovering in the air, said indifferently, Dugawubai, how does it feel to have your spiritual abode shattered? What? Hearing Huang Qianqiu's words, the pupils of the sky prides from the 4 empires shrank at the same time. Dugawubai's spiritual abode had been shattered? Master. Mu Xingzu's body trembled slightly. The expressions of Jian Jinghong and the others also instantly tightened. However, with Yi Guchen's current state, they had no choice but to believe Huang Qianqiu's words. This was because no one could sense the aura of the divine dwelling stage from Yi Guchen's body. How could this be? Zhao Xiaodi was also somewhat dazed. Yi Guchen had broken through to the divine dwelling stage not too long ago, and she had even witnessed it. How long had it been since then? And Huang Qianqiu had destroyed his spiritual abode. It could only be said that the world was unpredictable. On the other side, the valiant little Marquis Zhongshan wanted to laugh out loud. He was undoubtedly the one who rejoiced the most about Yi Guchen's spiritual abode being destroyed. Just like him, there were also Yinju, Shangguan Jingshan, and the other sky prides from the aristocratic families. It could be said that Yi Guchen had risen from the Sword Dynasty, and could be called a legend. He had suppressed the sky prides from the aristocratic families to the point of suffocation. Now the mountain that had been pressing down on them had finally been completely shattered. Feeling the various gazes from the surrounding sky prides, Yi Guchen himself was the calmest one. Huang Qianqiu was right. The spiritual abode in his dantian had indeed been shattered. Although Yi Guchen had used the 9-dragon thunder prison to block the rage god slash, the destructive power had still penetrated his defense and shattered Yi Guchen's spiritual abode. If it were any other sky prides, they would have gone crazy. However, Yi Guchen's expression was incomparably calm. The reason was simple. With the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, Yi Guchen was not afraid of his spiritual abode being destroyed. Or in other words, even if Huang Qianqiu did not destroy his spiritual abode, in the future, Yi Guchen would take the initiative to destroy his spiritual abode. This was because Yi Guchen was ambitious. He wanted to cultivate the highest quality spiritual abode. And the only way to cultivate it was to destroy one's spiritual abode over and over again, and then rebuild it. Just like Feng Manlu and Ling Emoshu. It was because of this that Yi Guchen did not panic at all. In fact, Huang Qianqiu had even helped Yi Guchen destroy his spiritual abode for free. Dugawubai, I have to say that I do admire you a little. Your spiritual abode has been destroyed, but you are still so calm. Huang Qianqiu said calmly as he looked at Yi Guchen's calm expression. Yi Guchen's performance was beyond his expectations. Huang Qianqiu, I will remember this. One day, I will give you a taste of your own medicine. Yi Guchen said coldly. Yi Guchen did not provoke others for no reason, but he would not allow others to bully him either. Huang Qianqiu had forced him, and even destroyed his spiritual abode, just for the cultivation technique in his body. Although Yi Guchen had the ability to rebuild his spiritual abode, this enmity had been formed. Ha, you are already a cripple. Do you have the right to say such things? Huang Qianqiu did not take it to heart. He just found it laughable. Not to mention Yi Guchen, whose spiritual abode had been destroyed. Even if Yi Guchen was at his peak, Huang Qianqiu would not care about him at all. Yi Guchen said that he would give Huang Qianqiu a taste of his own medicine because he wanted to destroy Huang Qianqiu's spiritual abode. But, how was that possible? The other sky prides shook their heads. They thought that Yi Guchen had said it in a fit of anger. Alright, I will suppress you now. Huang Qianqiu did not want to drag things out. After his spiritual abode was destroyed, Yi Guchen would be even more powerless to resist. Yi Guchen's face was also slightly solemn. Now that his spiritual abode had been destroyed, his combat strength had indeed dropped. It would be difficult for him to face Huang Qianqiu's attack. However, just as Huang Qianqiu was about to suppress Huang Qianqiu, the entire sacred hall suddenly shook violently. On the ground, a series of complex and mysterious runes appeared, bringing with them an ancient and powerful aura. Jian Kuei, who was sitting cross-legged at the top of the pyramid, let out an old laugh. The Great Sky Ruins Array has finally been activated. My plan is about to come to fruition. Chapter 1083. Jian Kuei had been possessed by an ancient primordial spirit. The ancient primordial spirit was obviously a saint of the Void Sky dynasty. Naturally, it was familiar with the formations in the sacred dynasty's treasure. When Yi Guchen approached the sacred hall, he also sensed that there was a faint fluctuation of a powerful array below the sacred hall. The formation was the Great Formation of Sky Market that Jian Kuei had mentioned. The Great Formation of Sky Market had become the protective formation of the sacred dynasty's treasure, which showed how powerful it was. With the help of the compass in his hand, Jian Kuei had finally activated the Great Formation of Sky Market. His plan with the Sword Dynasty's pseudo-saint family could finally be activated. The plan has been activated. Those who have nothing to do with it should leave, Jian Kuei said in an old voice under the mask. It wasn't that he didn't want to deal with Huang Qianxiu and the others. It was just that Huang Qianxiu had the backing of the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion. The Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion was also an overlord force with true Saint Realm experts. If Huang Qianxiu died here, the Imperial Heavenly Sword Pavilion wouldn't let it go. As soon as Jian Kuei finished speaking, he lifted the compass in his hand. Below the ground, runes rose into the air, and a mysterious force spread out. Suddenly, except for Yi Guchen, everyone else was teleported to the outside of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. At the same time, in the Thousand Demon Nest mountain range, the war continued. The pseudo-saints of the four great dynasties were fighting with the monster kings of the Thousand Demon Nest. The rest of the honorables were also fighting against the 7th-ranked demonic beasts. Suddenly, the entire Thousand Demon Nest mountain range shook violently. It was as if an ancient giant had stomped on the ground, creating a deafening roar. What's going on? What's going on? Did something happen in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure? The experts of the four great dynasties were all alarmed. They knew very well that the change had something to do with the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Yi Tianqing, who was in the midst of a great battle with the King of Monsters, narrowed her eyes slightly. It seems that something happened in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. I wonder if they got the fruit of the Saint Path. Yi Tianqing murmured. The fruit of the Saint Path was very important to the Sword Dynasty. If the Sword Dynasty could produce a heavenly tribulation saint, the entire dynasty's chaos would be stabilized. Just as Yi Tianqing was pondering, formation runes appeared all over the Thousand Demons Nest mountain range. Vaguely, the Sacred Dynasty's treasure hidden deep underground was rumbling. The Sacred Dynasty's treasure seemed to break out of the ground. Is that the Sacred Dynasty's treasure? The experts from the four great empires revealed astonishment when they saw the large piece of land that had broken out from the ground. It was their first time seeing the Sacred Dynasty's. And now, there was obviously some kind of change in the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. Countless runes spread it spread chi like a star. The array formation's demon. Saint was God. Heaven. When Hua Yuntao and the other false saints from the aristocratic families saw this scene, their eyes suddenly revealed a trace of joy. He did it. He really did it. Next, Hua Yuntao's old eyes flashed with coldness. The next moment, Yi Tianqing was suddenly wrapped by the array formation's power and disappeared. At the same time, the three false saints, Confuzi, Wu Hongyan, and Gu Yuanxi disappeared. Hua Yuntao and the others from the aristocratic family's camp also disappeared. They were all teleported to the sacred palace of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure by the array formation's power. The disappearance of the 10 false saints from the Sword Dynasty caused quite a stir. What's going on with the Sword Dynasty? The War God Dynasty's false saint expert, Marquis Valiant, raised his eyebrows. Fortunately, the Sacred Dynasty's treasure had appeared and interrupted the battle. The Monster Kings and the human false saint experts were temporarily divided into two sides and confronted each other. The moment Yi Tianqing and the other true saints from the Sword Dynasty were teleported to the sacred palace, the entire Great Array formation of Sky Market began to operate. A barrier suddenly appeared and covered the entire area of the Sacred Dynasty's treasure. The people from the outside world could not see through the barrier. Of course, they could not break the barrier either. Even if a false saint expert or a demonic beast king were to attack, they would not be able to break this layer of barrier. The true saints of the 4 great dynasties who were teleported out of the sacred palace still had lingering fear on their faces. Huang Qianqiu's face was extremely gloomy. He had been traveling in the South Horizon region for a long time, and had never suffered a loss. Now he had suffered a great loss. At least he did not manage to capture Yi Guqin. Moreover, Huang Qianqiu also knew that Jian Kuei would never let Yi Guqin go. In other words, he had no chance at all. As for the others such as Zhong Shan, Yinju, and Shangguan Jingshan, they were gloating, thinking that Yi Guqin was destined to die. How could this be? Master. Mu Xingzu's eyes were red as she frantically attacked the barrier. However, she could not move it at all. It's useless. Even a false saint expert would not be able to break this barrier, Jian Jinghong said in a low voice. Ling Mayan was also absent-minded for a while. As for Suki Miyazaki, Zhao Xiaodi and the other girls, although they did not have a particularly deep relationship with Yi Guqin, they were also sighing at this moment. In the sacred palace, Yi Guqin looked coldly at Jian Kuei, who was on top of the pyramid. Kid, do you know why I did not let you go? Jian Kuei asked. Why? Yi Guqin asked calmly. Yi Guqin was even calmer now that the situation had come to this. His spiritual dwelling had been destroyed, and his combat strength had hit rock bottom. Facing Jian Kuei, who had been possessed by an ancient primordial spirit, he had almost no power to resist. However, the more this was the case, the calmer Yi Guqin became. Haha, I can sense that there is also a saint primordial spirit residing in your body. Jian Kuei let out a cold laugh. So what? Yi Guqin said indifferently. Yi Guqin was not surprised that Jian Kuei could sense Su Qingyu's presence. After all, a saint primordial spirit's perception was still very sharp. A saint primordial spirit is a great tonic. Jian Kuei sneered. Yi Guqin suddenly understood. The ancient primordial spirit wanted to devour Su Qingyu's primordial spirit to strengthen its own strength. Obviously, Su Qingyu had heard the conversation as well. Just as he was about to appear, the space in the sacred palace distorted. Figures appeared one after another. They were Yi Tianqing and the others who had been teleported in. As soon as Yi Tianqing and the others entered, they saw Jian Kuei sitting on top of the pyramid. They immediately sensed that something was not right. At this moment, Hua Yuntao and the other false saints who had also been teleported in showed a relaxed smile on their faces. They immediately separated themselves from Heavenly Love, Jian Mister, and the others. Hua Yuntao, what is the meaning of this? Yi Tianqing asked calmly. Haha, it's all over. Yi Tianqing, your days of leading the Sword Dynasty have also come to an end. Hua Yuntao could not help but look up to the sky and laugh. Old man Hua, have you lost your mind? Wu Hongyan said coldly with a murderous look on her face. I have never been more clear-headed than today. Jian Kuei, our plan can be carried out completely. Hua Yuntao turned around and said. Jian Kuei, who was on top of the pyramid, responded faintly. He raised the compass in his hand. In an instant, the entire great formation of sky ruins was activated again, and a terrifying suppressive force fell on the faces of Yi Tianqing and the others. The seal of the great formation of sky ruins has been activated. You can't escape, and no one from the outside can break through the barrier to enter. Your final fate is to die here. Jian Kuei's old and cold voice spread throughout the sacred palace. Chapter 1084. At this moment, Jian Kuei was holding the compass in his hand. It was equivalent to controlling the entire great array of sky ruins. As the protective formation of the Void Sky Sacred Dynasty, the power of the great array of sky ruins was beyond doubt. Even after the baptism of time, the remaining power was still shocking enough. A terrifying suppressive force spread out and covered Yi Tianyin, Jianfuzi, Wu Hongyan, and Gu Yuanxi, the four false saints. In an instant, the four experts felt the space being crushed. The strength of Confuzi, Wu Hongyan, and the others was reduced by almost 30% in an instant. Heavenly Love was the strongest, but 20% of her strength was also suppressed. Jinkue. No, this is the primordial spirit host body? Heavenly Love looked at Jinkue. Naturally, she saw Jinkue's strange state at the moment. She immediately thought of the primordial spirit host body, an ancient and evil technique. I see. I understand. Heavenly Love suddenly understood. She glanced at Hua Yuntao and the others and said, "Is this your plan?" Heavenly Love was quick-witted and wise, and she immediately understood the cause and effect. The pseudo-saint families had obviously discovered Jinkue under some circumstances, and reached a plan with Jinkue. And the target of this plan was obviously Heavenly Love. After the Sword Path Alliance's leader, Proud Divine Prefecture, was trapped in the skyless sword realm. The entire Sword Dynasty was suppressed by Heavenly Love. Without Heavenly Love, the 5 pseudo-saint families would have been in charge of the Sword Dynasty. Therefore, Heavenly Love naturally became a thorn in the side of the pseudo-saint families. However, Heavenly Love's strength was considered top-notch among the pseudo-saints. The 5 pseudo-saint families had no confidence in eliminating Heavenly Love, so they could only wait for an opportunity. And the Sacred Dynasty's relic was undoubtedly the biggest opportunity. With Jinkue controlling the great array of sky ruins, they could suppress Heavenly Love and the others and then kill them. Haha, Heavenly Love, don't you think it's a little too late to figure it out now? Hua Yuntao sneered. He didn't even address him as Vice Alliance Master, and directly called him by his full name. Old Ghost Hua, you're too presumptuous. Confuzi said angrily. Right now, the Sword Dynasty is facing both internal and external threats. Yet you still want to start a civil war? How foolish. Wu Hongyan scolded. There's no need to say anything more. In short, this place will be your burial ground. The Shangguan clan head, Shangguan Bo coldly said. There were 6 false saints on their side, plus Jinkue and the Sky Market Array. Yi Tianqing and the others were in grave danger. I originally thought that no matter how selfish you were, you would still consider the Sword Alliance and the Sword Dynasty. Now it seems that I was wrong. Yi Tiannin's handsome face was covered in a layer of frost. As the deputy leader of the Sword Dao Alliance, he had already tried his best to be fair and just. Even though the fake saint family had many tricks up their sleeves, he wasn't too harsh on them. However, this kind of leniency was exchanged for a deadly plot. Even someone as calm as Yi Tianyin had a layer of frost on his face. There's nothing more to say. We can only fight them to the end, Gu Yuanxi said coldly. At this moment, Confuzi noticed Yi Guchen. Duguwubai, why are you here? Confuzi asked. Someone doesn't want me to leave. Yi Guchen shook his head. In the current situation, even Confuzi and the others would find it difficult to protect themselves. Not to mention Yi Guchen. If you want to fight, then fight, but there's no need to involve the younger generation, Confuzi said in a low voice. He was the dean of Sacred Cliff College, and Yi Guchen was the greatest pride of Sacred Cliff College. Confuzi naturally couldn't sit back and watch Yi Guchen die here. This kid is also someone I must eliminate. Hua Yuntao looked at Yi Guchen with extreme coldness. As a fake saint expert, he had lost face in front of Yi Guchen time and time again. Hua Yuntao's killing intent towards Yi Guchen had also reached its peak. Moreover, Yi Guchen's innate talent as a saint made Hua Yuntao extremely uneasy. He was not a fool. Naturally, he would not let the tiger return to the mountain and watch Yi Guchen grow up. Therefore, whether it was Yi Tianyin and the others, or Yi Guchen, Hua Yuntao had to kill them all today to completely eliminate any future troubles. Despicable old man. Wu Hongyan's charming face was filled with anger as she gritted her teeth. Yi Tianyin glanced at Yi Guchen from the corner of her eye, but a faint light flashed in her eyes. After I'm done with you, I'll personally end this little bastard, Hua Yuntao said coldly. Yi Guchen was obviously no threat to fake saints like them. The most important thing now was to deal with Yi Tianyin and the others. Go. Without any hesitation, Hua Yuntao and the others attacked. Since the plan had already been implemented, there was no reason to retreat. Qin Fuzi, Wu Hongyan, and Gu Yuanxi also attacked brazenly. Yi Tianyin sighed softly and stretched out her hand to grasp the void. As the air currents surged, an elegant silver-white blade appeared. It was Yi Tianyin's sword, Phoenix seeking Phoenix. This sword was the only memento left for her by that person. Yi Tianyin had originally planned to resign from her position as the deputy alliance leader after the Sword Dynasty stabilized and pursue that person. Now it was hard to say whether she would live or die. Yi Tianyin gently stroked the blade of Phoenix seeking Phoenix with a faint gaze. I have no intention of killing, but the fighting doesn't stop. You 5 fake saint families are really ignorant. After Yi Tianyin finished speaking, the blade vibrated, and her aura surged. Although 20% of her strength was suppressed by the great formation of sky ruins, it was still extremely terrifying. Hua Yuntao and the others looked solemn. Next, a great battle unfolded in the sacred palace. The battle between false saint experts was astonishing. If not for the suppression of the great formation of sky ruins, the entire sacred palace would definitely be overturned in an instant by the airwaves and turned into ruins. Yi Guqin retreated to the bottom. He did not choose to escape because it was impossible for him to break through the barrier of the great formation of sky ruins. Even at his peak he could not do it, let alone now that his divine dwelling had been destroyed and his combat strength had fallen to rock bottom. Yi Tianyin's strength is very strong. Yi Guqin looked up and muttered to himself. Qin Fuzi, Wu Hongyan, and the others were not weak among the fake saints. Yi Tianyin was slightly stronger than them, and was almost at the saint realm. However, in the current situation, other than Yi Tianyin, the other 3 were not in good condition. After all, their enemies were 6 fake saints. In addition, their strength was suppressed by 30%. Qin Fuzi, Wu Hongyan, and Gu Yuanxi were injured not long after. Blood flowed from the corners of their mouths. Gu Yuanxi's strength was the weakest among the 4, and his injuries were also the most serious. Die. The 2 fake saints, Shangguanbo and Yinlingshan, looked at each other and burst out their monstrous cultivation base, using their trump cards. Sunrise Sword Codex. 9 Yin Slashing Sword. The 2 of them combined their moves and attacked Gu Yuanxi together. No. Qin Fuzi and Wu Hongyan's expressions changed abruptly. They wanted to help, but they were firmly held back. Yi Tianyin was also restrained by the 2 fake saints and could not immediately rescue him. Boom. Accompanied by a roar, Gu Yuanxi's body burst open and blood spurted out. With a loud bang, the residual force left behind by the fake saint spread out. A fake saint expert exploded like a meteor and died. Chapter 1085. How important was a false saint expert? In the Nantian region, heavenly tribulation saints were rare and rarely appeared. If heavenly tribulation saints did not appear, then false saints were the strongest. Even if there was only one false saint expert in a dynasty, it could raise the entire dynasty to the level of a top-tier dynasty. This showed how rare and powerful a false saint expert was. However, at this moment, in front of Yi Guqin, a false saint expert had died just like that. Moreover, it was a false saint from the itinerant cultivator camp. This was a great loss to the entire Sword Dynasty. Rumble. Gu Yuanxi's body exploded like a huge star, and at the same time, it released a terrifying shock wave. At the last moment of his life, Gu Yuanxi chose to self-destruct. The self-destruction of a false saint expert was extremely powerful. Shangguanbo and Yinlingshan, who were closest to him, were the first to bear the brunt of the shock wave. Puff. Both of them spat out a mouthful of blood and suffered serious injuries. Damn it. Even death can't let us rest in peace. Both of them retreated continuously, and the blood in their chests was churning. With Gu Yuanxi's death, Yi Tianqing, Qin Fuzi, and Wu Hongyan seemed to be in a worse position. There's no other way. Lord Sword King, we will do our best to delay them. Can you break the barrier and leave? Wu Hongyan looked at Yi Tianqing and said deeply. She had always admired Yi Tianqing and had a trace of affection for her. Yes, Lord Sword King, You are the hope of the entire Sword Dynasty. With you around, the Sword Dynasty will not completely fall apart. Qin Fuzi said hurriedly. Wu Hongyan and Qin Fuzi were both willing to sacrifice themselves to let Yi Tianqing leave. Below, Yi Guqin saw this scene and felt a little emotional. What kind of charisma did one have to make others willing to die for him? I, Sword Sovereign Yi Tianqing, am unable to do something like betraying my friends and running for my life. It's impossible for me to do that. Without the slightest hesitation, Heavenly Love rejected their suggestion. Yishinking was the Sword Sovereign, the Deputy Alliance leader of the Sword Dao Alliance, an existence that could suppress an entire dynasty. He would never let others die while he dragged out an ignoble existence. Hearing Yi Tianqing's words, Wu Hongyan's charming eyes flashed with a trace of infatuation. This was the Sword Sovereign that she liked. Heh, you don't have to shirk your responsibilities. Anyway, the three of you can't escape. Hua Yuntao said with a fake smile. You all have truly angered me. Yi Tianqing's words were cold. His eyebrows were cold, and his hand brushed past the silver sword. A powerful and terrifying sword essence spread out. Vaguely, it was as if the power of heaven and earth was gathering, causing a storm of sword qi to rise within the sacred hall. Could that be? Yi Guqin's eyes narrowed when he saw this. Yi Guqin was no stranger to this concept. It was the unity of heaven and man realm. The Sword Dao state of mind went from the heart of the sword to the unity of man and sword, and then to the unity of heaven and man. The unity of heaven and man realm was undoubtedly the most difficult state to comprehend. Even though Yi Guqin had comprehended the unity of man and sword for a long time, he still needed a long time to comprehend the unity of heaven and man realm. Back in the infinite planes, Feng Manlu had sacrificed himself and used the unity of heaven and man realm to perform the ultimate sword move and defeat the supremacies. Now Yi Guqin finally saw the unity of heaven and man realm from Yi Tianqing again. Sacred Heart Sword Momentum, Heavenly Spirit Sword Illusion. Yi Tianqing suddenly stabbed out, and countless illusory swords appeared in the surrounding void. Along with the unity of heaven and man realm sword momentum, it released a powerful force that swept toward Hua Yuntao and the other pseudo-saints. Rumble. The battle broke out again. This time, Yi Tianqing attacked with all his might and no longer held back. Even with the suppression of the great array of heaven, Yi Tianqing's combat strength was so powerful that Hua Yuntao and the others were shocked. Both of you deserve to die. Yi Tianqing's sword move focused on Shangguanbo and Yin Lingshan, because it was these two people who had caused Gu Yuanxi's death. Moreover, Shangguanbo and Yin Lingshan were both injured, so it was even more difficult for them to resist Yi Tianqing's move. Sacred Heart Sword Momentum, Heavenly Path Sword Abyss. Yi Tianqing held the phoenix-seeking phoenix in her hand and slashed down. Sword qi suddenly erupted, as if it had cut open an abyss. Damn it! Shangguanbo and Yin Lingshan both vomited blood, and blood spurted out from their bodies. Even if they resisted with all their might, it would be difficult for them to block Yi Tianqing's ultimate move. Yi Tianqing, don't be so arrogant. Hua Yuntao and the others saw this and charged forward. However, Qin Fuzi and Wu Hongyan desperately tried to hold back the four people who wanted to save them. Sacred Heart Sword Momentum, Heavens Will Sword Extinction. Yi Tianqing raised her hand, and the silver-white blade buzzed and trembled. That was the cold sound of killing intent. Facing the two false saints who had killed Gu Yuanxi, the killing intent in Yi Tianqing's heart had reached its peak. Terrifying sword qi spread out. This move was considered an extremely powerful killer move even among the Sacred Heart Sword Momentum. The sword slashed down, as if it was the will of heaven that was merciless, cutting off one's life. No. Shangguanbo and Yin Lingshan roared angrily, and also used their trump cards. However, they were injured, and they were no match for Yi Tianqing at all. Puchi. The sword slashed down, and blood splattered. Two heads flew out, and blood spurted into the sky. Two false saint experts had fallen, and in this tragic scene of blood flying, Yi Tianqing's long hair fluttered, and her white robe fluttered. She was like a celestial being, and the sword in her hand was not stained with a drop of blood. Yi Tianqing slaughtered the world with her sword. This was Yi Tianqing's true style. This expert who had suppressed the sword dynasty with her own strength. It was fine if she did not use her sword, but once she did, she killed until the false saints trembled in fear. That's great. Wu Hongyan's beautiful eyes were filled with joy. Yi Tianqing had killed 2 false saints with a single slash, so there were only 4 false saints left, including Hua Yintao. The threat would be greatly reduced. Damn it! Hua Yintao could not help but curse. Yi Tianqing's strength had greatly exceeded his expectations. Yi Tianqing had always been low-key, so Hua Yintao and the others had misjudged her strength. Jinkui, are you still watching? Hua Yintao shouted sternly. Hua Yintao's shout made Wu Hongyan and Confuzi's heart sink again. Haha, you guys are really useless. Jinkui let out an old chuckle, which seemed exceptionally strange. Then he raised the compass in his hand again, and an even more terrifying array formation power spread out. The entire sky market array rumbled and rotated again. Endless light rose from the ground into the sky. From the light, the figure of an ancient giant in heavy armor walked out. This ancient giant held a giant axe and exuded a powerful and terrifying aura. That's the spirit of the array. Wu Hongyan's beautiful face turned pale. Arrays were divided into 3 grades: heaven, earth, and human. Earth grade and above arrays could condense the spirit of the array. For example, Yi Guchen's 6 Dao Azura sword formation could condense the spirit of Azura. The 5 Emperors' Cosmos sword formation could condense the spirits of the 5 elements. This powerful ancient giant in front of them was the spirit of the sky market array. Yi Guchen did not know what grade the sky market array was, but it was obviously more powerful than the 2 arrays he had. Chapter 1086. As Jinkui summoned the formation spirit of the great array of sky market, the battle situation that had eased up became dangerous once again. It could be said that this ancient giant's strength was absolutely comparable to both Shangguanbo and Yinlingshan. More importantly, the primordial giant was only the formation spirit, not a body of flesh and blood. Therefore, it would not be injured. It would only attack without fear of death. Under Jinkui's control, the primordial giant chopped down at Heavenly Love with its giant axe. Heavenly Love swept across, and the sword radiance spread out, colliding with the primordial giant's giant axe. A rumbling sound erupted as the giant axe broke through Heavenly Love's sword light as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It directly collided with the tip of the sword. In front of the primordial giant's huge body, Heavenly Love was like a small dot. However, Heavenly Love withstood the primordial giant's attack. However, it was only withstanding the attack. Heavenly Love could not cause any substantial damage to the primordial giant. Wu Hongyan and the Swordmaster, on the other hand, were in grave danger. The suppressive force on them had increased again. The 2 of them had already had 40% of their strength suppressed. With only 60% of their strength left, it was difficult for them to deal with Hua Yintao and the other false saints. Boom. After another collision, Wu Hongyan coughed out some blood from her red lips. She was as beautiful as a flower. Her aura had already fallen to rock bottom. On the other side, Confuzi was in a similar situation. Haha, Heavenly Love, you can only watch as they die, but you can't do anything to save them. Hua Yintao laughed. You. Heavenly Love's eyebrows were gloomy. The primordial giant was holding him back. He could not save Confuzi and Wu Hongyan. Sword King, don't worry about us. Wu Hongyan shouted. She did not want to distract Heavenly Love. Even if she died, Wu Hongyan would not drag Heavenly Love down. Below, Yi Guchen frowned. To be honest, he also wanted to help Heavenly Love and the other 2. However, even if Yi Guchen was in his best condition, he could not intervene in a battle of this level. Not to mention now. What should I do? I can't just sit and watch. Yi Guchen frowned. When he first came to the Sword Dynasty, Heavenly Love knew his identity. Not only did she not expose him, but she was also willing to help Yi Guchen hide his identity. As the Dean of Sacred Cliff College, Confuzi also took care of Yi Guchen. As for Wu Hongyan, when Yi Guchen was being suppressed by Hua Yintao, it could be said that Yi Guchen was indebted to all 3 of them. Yi Guchen knew that he wasn't a good person, But he wasn't an ungrateful person either. He couldn't just sit by and watch Jian Mister and Wu Hongyan die. At this moment, Su Qingyu's voice rang in Yi Guchen's mind. Yi Guchen, do you really want to save them? Of course. I wonder if you have any ideas, senior? Yi Guchen said in his mind. Yi Guchen had never asked Su Qingyu for help. However, Su Qingyu was probably the only one who could do it now. It's not like there's no other way. Didn't you get a soul source crystal? Although my primordial spirit is weak, I might be able to use part of its power with the support of the soul source crystal, Su Qingyu said. Su Qingyu was a saint's primordial spirit. Even if he could only use part of its power, he might be able to threaten Hua Yuntao and the rest. Let's do that then. Yi Guchen agreed without hesitation. What about your clone? Su Qingyu hesitated. If we can get out of this crisis, we might be able to get the soul source crystal from the other saints' corpses, Yi Guchen said. There were a total of 7 saints' corpses on the pyramid. He and Huang Qianqiu each searched for a corpse. There were 5 corpses left. As long as there was a soul source crystal in one of the 5 corpses, there would be no problem. All right then. Put the soul source crystal between your eyebrows, Su Qingyu said. Yi Guchen took out a crystal the size of a pigeon's egg. It was the soul source crystal. He placed it between his eyebrows. Suddenly, a terrifying wave of soul energy as vast as the sea poured into Yi Guchen's mind. With Yi Guchen's mind, it was impossible for him to digest such a vast amount of soul energy in a short period of time. His sea of consciousness might even explode from the pressure. However, a suction force appeared and devoured the vast amount of energy. Su Qingyu's primordial spirit had been attacked by the saints in the Tianhuang Plains, and had been in a weak state. At this moment, after absorbing the power of the soul source crystal, Su Qingyu's primordial spirit could unleash a great amount of power in a short period of time. On the other side, Confuzi and Wu Hongyan were both covered in blood. Hua Yuntao and the other 3 false saints did not hold back at all. Their attacks were almost fatal. Wu Hongyan, it was you who stopped me from dealing with that little bastard. You didn't expect to be reduced to such a state, did you? Hua Yuntao attacked Wu Hongyan with his palm. Wu Hongyan's strength was suppressed by 40% and she was injured. This attack caused her to fall back again. Her red lips were stained with blood. I will never regret it. Even if I have to do it again, I will still stop you, you old bastard. Wu Hongyan shouted coldly. Her flawless face was full of coldness. Well, as the saying goes, beautiful women are ill-fated. Then go to hell. Hua Yuntao did not say anything else. He and another false saint of the Hua family, Hua Yunhai, attacked Wu Hongyan at the same time. Wu Hongyan's face was cold, but there was a touch of bitterness at the corner of her mouth. She was indeed close to dying and had no more combat power. It was impossible for her to block the attacks of Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai. Confuzi could not even protect himself. Yi Tianqing was tied down by the ancient giant. No one could help her. Am I going to die? Wu Hongyan thought. She was not afraid of death, but she felt a little regretful and unwilling. Hua Yuntao and Hua Yunhai's joint attacks were about to land on her. Just as Wu Hongyan was about to choose to self-destruct, the sound of wind breaking suddenly rang in her ears. Soon after, Wu Hongyan felt her waist being held by someone. Her entire body was in that person's embrace. Sword King. Wu Hongyan's instinctive reaction was Yi Tianqing. But when she took a closer look, she saw a calm and handsome side profile. Dugu Wu Bai. Wu Hongyan was slightly stunned. She had never thought that it was Yi Guchen who saved her. You little bastard. Are you in such a hurry to die? Hua Yuntao's face darkened when he saw that Yi Guchen had helped Wu Hongyan avoid the attack. Dugu Wu Bai, find a way to leave. This is not a battle you can participate in. Wu Hongyan hurriedly said. Wu Hongyan felt a little unnatural being held in the arms of a young man who was younger than her. A faint blush appeared on her face. But at this moment, she was more concerned about Yi Guchen's safety. A battle of this level was not something that Yi Guchen could get involved in. Dinwu, you have helped me before. How can I sit back and watch you get hurt? Yi Guchen said calmly, without a trace of panic. Wu Hongyan's face froze, and then she chuckled. You are so stubborn. If I had not met Sword King, I might have fallen in love with you. Wu Hongyan's beautiful face, which was as beautiful as a fox fairy, had a sweet smile. Wu Hongyan was probably the only one who could still crack a joke in such a situation. Dean Wu, you must be joking, Yi Guchen said calmly. Seeing that Wu Hongyan and Yi Guchen did not seem to care about him at all, Hua Yuntao's veins throbbed on his forehead. He shouted coldly, "Die!" He and Hua Yunhai attacked Yi Guchen and Wu Hongyan again. You are the ones who are courting death. Yi Guchen's eyes shone with a cold light. A terrifying saint-level soul power was brewing in his body. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.